people of Reddit who have been denied when they proposed. Why did it happen? And what was the end result? Not denied during a proposal, but 99% sure she realized I was going to propose and bailed before I had the chance. 8 years and changed together. Everything seemed totally fine. We talked about a future together plenty of times. Engagement rings, jobs, housing, kids, etc. The job and housing parts were going forward, and she had shown me rings and talked weddings plenty, so it felt like it was time to finally do that. Bought a ring, tried planning some neat trips to take her on for an awesome proposal. They kept not happening. Finally decided I was just going to do it around New Year's, but right before that she bailed. Timing was just so perfect for her not to have figured it out. Never really got an explanation, just the general, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. One of those kinda generic statements that you hate to get, especially after so long, but at the same time I'm sure there was plenty of legitimacy to it. We met when we were young, and we grew into different people. People change a lot between the mid-teens and mid-20s. We tried to maintain a friendship for a while after that, but it was super hard for me, because I was still totally into her. I had to basically drop off the map entirely for a year or so, because we shared the same social circle and I just got so incredibly uncomfortable around her. No hard feelings I guess at the end of the day. It sucked, but it wasn't like something awful happened between us. Eventually we just stopped talking. She drifted to a new social group. I got back in mine. Life goes on. Definitely not where I expected to be at this point in my life though. Not anywhere near as exciting/interesting as some other stories. My dad proposed to my mom after they'd been seeing each other for just under 2 weeks. She laughed and basically told him he was crazy, that it was way too soon. My dad said, and he is very proud of this fact, "Fine. I asked you once. I'm not gonna ask again." My mom thought he was bluffing. After a year of dating she started giving him a hard time about not asking her to get married again, and he stuck to his guns and said she missed her chance and he wasn't going to ask again. My mom finally broke down and asked him to marry her. Made sure she properly took the piss out of him when she did it too. Made a big show about asking his father for permission, got down on one knee in public, got him the gaudiest engagement ring she could find. He said yes, and they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. Edit. I guess I could have done a better job of conveying the spirit of my dad's initial proposal, because some people seem to think it was a serious thing, where he actually got down on one knee, but it wasn't anything like that. My mom and dad were planning their next date, trying to figure out if they could go do anything after he got off of work, and he said, "Hey, I know, we could go get married." He was serious, but he framed it as a joke because he knew it was insane. She thought he was joking, but kind of suspected he wasn't. Asked him if he was crazy in the very loud, hard to be offended by it way she has. Said it's too soon, but, you know, feel free to ask again later. My dad kept up his joking tone when he said he wouldn't ask again, hence why my mom thought he was just kidding when he wouldn't ask again. It wasn't at all framed like an ultimatum, but he really enjoyed reminding my mom of the fact that he'd already asked her to marry him whenever she nagged him about when he was going to get around to proposing. I'm proposing today. I will hopefully not report back. Edit. I'm not dead yet. I want to go for a walk. Seriously though, I'm proposing tonight around 8 PM court. I likely won't update this until tomorrow with the results, but I will keep you all updated. Thanks everyone for the best wishes and encouragement. Edit 2. I'm only here for a minute. She said yes. We'll post pictures later. Edit 2.5. Pictures, as promised. Sorry for the potato quality. http://imgur.com/jfkms. I will likely post one final update tonight with the story, for those of you still interested. Thank you all so much for your support. It really helped my nerves yesterday to know I had so much support from so many internet friends. Final update. First, thank you guys so much for all of the encouragement and best wishes. It really meant a ton to me and to my fiancée. I'm totally just using that because I can, as well when I showed her. So, my birthday is in a few weeks, and I decided to use that as the cover for the proposal. Fiancé saw through that until halfway through the night, but I'm getting ahead of myself, and an excuse to get all dressed up. My brother and his wife took us out to dinner at one of the classier places in town at 6:30. The fiancé and I met them at their house early, so we could all ride together, for the sake of simplifying the return. The stated plan was to go to dinner, then go back to my family's house, to watch a movie by a bonfire in their little grove, where we would be joined by my other brother and his wife. What was really happening was that we were using the sheet to conceal a small group of our friends who were there to, hopefully, celebrate with us. When she said yes, the brother who was supposed to be joining us at the house for the movie was actually there to receive the guests and hide their vehicles, as well as to show them where to hide, etc. He had the fire already made. My fiancée sat down by it immediately. I stood next to her, mentally prepping for the moment. My brother nodded to me, asking if I was ready. I gave him the confirmation, and he dropped the sheet. I wish I had a picture of the exact moment, because the look on her face was perfect. I think it will always be engraved in my memory. At first, she didn't know what was happening, and thought the sheet had been knocked down by accident. Then she realized there were people behind the sheet. After another moment, she realized they weren't my family, but our friends. I remember saying something like, "This isn't actually my birthday party," and then dropping to one knee. Here's a photo from during my speech, which I barely remember making. She started crying, then said yes. Then I tried to put the ring on her finger. I'm going to pause here, because there was a beautiful surprise from my brother at this moment. First, some context is necessary. I lost my mom to breast cancer when I was 15. My brother asked for her engagement ring as a token to remember her by, and planned to hand it down to one of his children someday. Instead, he secretly had it repaired and resized for my fiancé's finger and swapped it with the ring I'd purchased. Because I don't make a ton of money, I'd chosen to get a very simple band to propose with. I didn't really like the idea because I wanted her to be able to show off her engagement ring. Anyway, back to the story. When I tried to offer her the ring, she said, "I don't care. Just hug me." Through tears, I stood up, but had already started to take the ring out of the box. I realized at this moment that the ring in my hand had something on it. I had a brief moment of panic because I thought I had accidentally left the price tag on the ring I got. Then I realized that I was holding on to the very edge of something solid and that there was a stone on this ring. I gave my brothers a super perplexed look, trying to process what had happened. I embraced the girl, and then kissed the girl, and then embraced her again for what was probably an awkwardly long time for everyone watching on. The rest of the evening was spent celebrating and talking with our friends by the fire. While we were talking, she mentioned to me that she had kind of expected me to propose that night, but thought I would do it at dinner. When I failed to do so, she second-guessed herself and thought it must have actually been just a birthday part for me. I'm so glad I managed to surprise her in the end. It was wonderful and emotional. I'm so excited to be engaged, and I can't wait to marry this woman. TLDR, we had dinner with my brother and his wife, then went back to their house with the stated goal of watching a movie on a projector by a bonfire. But really, the projector screen was hiding a group of our friends who were waiting to celebrate with us. It was awesome. I'm the denier. I'd been dating this girl for 6 months, and it was going pretty well. We hardly ever fought, but when we did it was hard for us to get back to normal. At a good point, she said, "I feel like I should pop the question." I have absolutely no poker face, and she instantly saw that I wasn't on board. As a child of the 80s, all of my friends had parents who'd divorced, and I'd made an oath to myself that I was just going to be married once. I liked this girl a lot, but I wasn't convinced yet that what we had was going to last forever. So, we stayed together, went to couples counseling, and learned how to fight. It sounds strange, but I can't tell you how effective it was. We learned that my conflict pattern is to constantly work on a problem until it's solved, where her pattern is to blow off steam over time. The result was that I would keep conversations going when we fought, and would basically chase her around, keeping her mad and blocking her attempts at breaking off to cool down. I learned to just let her be mad and check back in later, and she learned to say, "I just need to be by myself for a bit." It worked. Our good relationship with rough fights turned into great relationship with mature low drama fights. Conflicts that used to hang a dark cloud over the house for days were now resolved in hours. At that point I felt comfortable enough to say yes to a year-long engagement. And we've now been married 18 years, have supported each other through thick and thin, and are raising 2 awesome kids. The only regret I have is that we ended up without a proposal story, as it was effectively negotiated over time. I did get on my knee and present a ring at a fancy dinner, but even then it was a ring we'd picked out together, as she was a jewelry smith. Edit. Awkward grammar. We had been dating for 6.5 years at this time. We went on a vacation to Hawaii for her 21st birthday, because we wanted to make it something to remember. I planned to propose to her on the beach somewhere. I ended up choosing Waimea Bay Beach on the north shore of Oahu. She was coming back from the waves, and I popped the question. She was ecstatic and said yes. We had a very romantic couple of days after that before we flew home. Fast forward to 5 months later. We are out bar hopping with her sister and her husband who had just got out of the military. The husband and sister are moving to a base in Germany and they are staying for a couple weeks in our town. Her sister and her were together talking for most of the night and the husband insisted we hang out and play pool together and shoot the sheet. That's fine, he's a cool guy and she hasn't seen her sister in months. We get home from the bars around 12:30 am and all hell breaks loose. She starts screaming at me about how I'm a piece of shit and that I don't do enough chores around the house, and that she had to repair a piece on my car that we both use, and that I should have done that, and otherwise petty problems. It escalated to her shoving me as hard as she could into the bathroom, where I fell into the tub and hit my head. Eventually she went upstairs, and I cried in disbelief for most of the night. Finally fell asleep at around 5:30 am. She wakes me up at 8 or so cause she wants to talk about it, and I tell her to wait cause she made me cry and freak out all night. I wake up at 10 am and she says to me that she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life with me anymore, and that she wants to know what it's like to be single. She thinks my hobbies, snowboarding and climbing, are too dangerous. Bunch of other reasons that aren't real reasons. She had all of her stuff moved out with the help of her sister and husband by the end of that day. When I returned home after work she had left the ring, a framed picture of us I gave her as a gift, and the bottle of wine that was bottled on the same day we got together, that we were saving for our wedding night. That was exactly 1 month ago. I've tried to contact her since, and have gotten no response or explanation for her crazy behavior. Don't even know where she is staying as we had mostly only mutual friends and she's not with any of them. Her sister and husband are in Germany now. She took one of our dogs as well. Edit. Never thought I'd be the jerk to have to say RIP in barks and all that, but you guys are the best support group ever. I will try my best to read what everyone has to say because you guys are killing it on the support level. You guys are making me great again. Edit 2. My father was the minister that married her sister and husband. I'm about a month older than her sister. They married at 20 and 21 I think. 8 years ago. It's been 8 years. We had known each other for 5 years, dated for 3.5. Every single day I saw her was the best day of my life. We met while working at a pizza chain and had gotten close at work. I eventually worked up the courage to ask her out, even though it was awfully frowned upon as she was a driver and I was a manager. She said yes, and we went to a party together and literally didn't talk to a single other soul that night. I was hooked. We dated for a year and then moved in together. I can still see her face perfectly, even that long ago. Her family was wonderful. Her father an esteemed professor at a nearby college and her mother was a cancer survivor with a heart of gold. Everything just seemed to fit, and I knew that I wanted to be with her forever. After dating for 3 years, I finally popped the question. I had set up a normal night in, ordered a pizza, and had a nice little night in. We had a cat, Triumph, a nice little apartment, the whole shebang. I had tied a little pillow with the ring onto tree and sat her in the other room while my lady was in the bathroom. When she got back, I called for the cat and she came in, pillow and all on her back. I proposed and she burst into tears, saying she was sorry, and ran out of the apartment. I tried desperately to reach her, through family, friends, any way imaginable. I finally heard back from her sister after 3 days. Her entire family knew, and I was the only person out of the loop. She was diagnosed with a very aggressive terminal brain cancer just 3 days prior to me proposing. I was gutted. For so many reasons, but I could understand why she didn't tell me. After I had proposed, she told her sister that she had decided not to put me through that, but I didn't care. I would have stayed with her to the end of the earth. I tried night and day to contact her to no avail. She died just 5 weeks after I had proposed. I have never felt more lost and alone than I did at her funeral. Her family were very comforting, but I began to hate myself, thinking that it was something that I had done to scare her away, making her believe that I would leave her if she told me, when it couldn't have been further from the truth. I went into a deep depression for a very long time afterwards. I drank and did drugs, day and night. Went from job to job, not showing up for days on end. I dropped out of school, lost a lot of my friends, considered ending my life a few times. I know now that she kept it from me to try and save me the grief of losing her. But there's nothing in the world I wouldn't give to go back in time. Just to hear her say yes. Edit. All these kind words and all of you sharing your stories are really warming my heart. Thank you, Reddit. The world is truly full of beautiful people. Happened a couple years ago. Me and my so had been seeing each other for about 8 months. Though we loved one another, and I felt we had a strong relationship, we hadn't yet gotten around to talking about marriage much. What led to me proposing was a mini meltdown over a slew of family and acquaintances seemingly all getting married or engaged at the same time. This led me to a sudden realization. I was approaching 30 and nearly everyone in my life around my age were already married. I know that's not a good reason to get hitched. But when you get to be that age, things change. You start thinking long term. You start looking in the mirror at yourself a little more closely. You realize you aren't going to be around forever. So one night, after much wine and such, I proposed. Didn't really plan it out that much. We were listening to the Dirty Dancing soundtrack on repeat, as was custom. She's Like the Wind came on, and I got to thinking about Patrick Swayze, and how he died, and Jennifer Grey, and how her career died. It just got me really sentimental. I sort of blurted out, hey, let's get friggin' married. Not romantic, I know, especially considering that we were pretty much laying in a puddle of lube and our own fluids at the time. In fact, I hadn't even removed the belt from around my neck yet. Well, my so was pretty stunned at first, but then leveled with me. Said they didn't really picture us together in the long term. Wanted to keep it casual apparently. I said I'd put my blood, sweat, and tears into our relationship. Literally. The futon upon which we laid was covered in them. My pleas made no difference. Our respective levels of emotional involvement were simply vastly different. It was a huge blow for me. Not as big as what came next, however. My so said it might be a good time to take a break for a while, just to reevaluate things. I agreed but held out hope that we still had a future together. When they didn't see me or even text for a month afterward, I knew it was over. So what was the end result? Well, I took a few days off from my job at a food store and life in general to spend some time working through the grief and quietly reflecting on things. And by that I mean I drank copious amounts of boxed wine, watched hour and after hours of Hallmark movies, ate nothing but flamin' hot Cheetos with my right hand, and diddled myself with the left, all while softly weeping into a pair of dirty underwear, which was the only item of clothing my soul left behind. By the 6th such day, I began to feel a painful, cramping sensation in my upper abdomen. Turned out to be a precursor of diarrhea. Not just any diarrhea, though. It was of an orange-red hue. Since my loose stools are traditionally a light shade of mocha, I knew it was time to visit a physician. During my exam, I filled the doctor in on all my recent activities, making sure to leave out not one bit of information, even the stained undies. He considered what I told him for a minute, then told me the first thing I had to do was dry out. I explained to him that masturbating 9 times a day was a crucial part of my grieving process and I wasn't about to give it up. Plus it was difficult to stay dry when Jason London is filling the screen of my television with his dashing yet underachieving good looks. And who was this so-called doctor? to tell me what I can and cannot do with my incognito burrito anyway. After all, there are dozens more of his ilk on Craigslist that are perfectly willing to examine me without a patronizing demeanor. As it turned out, however, he actually meant that I should stop drinking for a few weeks. I told him I would definitely not drink any more alcohol whatsoever before 11 in the morning, unless it was a holiday, like Thanksgiving or 4th of July or Black History Month or the Year of the Rat. He gave me a funny look, like he was rethinking some of the choices he'd made in life, then continued with his diagnosis. It turned out that the discomfort I had suffered was brought on by the Cheetos. Apparently, consuming Flamin' Hot in excess can give one acute gastritis. I told him there was nothing cute about the watery Dugan I dropped in his office's restroom before my exam had begun, so maybe he wanted to change his diagnosis. He told me I should revisit my strategy for taking number 2s, particularly any aspects involving the keeping of feces off the walls, and also that I should look into eating something that wasn't made out of cheese dust. I reluctantly took his advice, as well as a pamphlet with full color illustrations depicting stees in the human male, in the event a Hallmark movie came on in which Jason London did not appear. Took one more dumper, this time in men's room, then return home. In the days that followed, my symptoms cleared up for the most part. I felt healed enough, both emotionally and physically, to return to work, and also to the dating pool, as well. Yes, I kept eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos, but I made sure to dip them in sour cream before taking them into my mouth, for safety. Much easier to digest that way, plus it keeps the Cheetos dust from turning my fingers, lips, and privates orange. So what have I been up to since? I downloaded a dating app called Tinder. Even though I'm new to it, I think I'm actually pretty good at this whole online dating thing, though I might simply be experiencing the Diane Kruger effect lol. I don't mean to be crass, but since I started Tinder, my fun bits have been kissed more than the Blarney Stone. Most importantly, however, I'm fine with not being married and just being me, because no matter what my so took from me, they didn't take away my dignity. That's the greatest love of all. I had a couple of friends that had been seriously involved since college. They felt that marriage was a tool of the patriarchy, was only a piece of paper, etc. 6 years on and the relationship was still going strong. They decided they wanted a kid. She got pregnant and things were going well. One night they had a serious discussion and decided that, since there was going to be a baby, they really needed to figure out the legal implications. They decided it was best if they got married, so that there wouldn't be any question of who takes care of the kid if something happened to one of them, etc. A little while later the guy realized that he was going to get married, but it was decided more or less in a discussion after weighing the costs and benefits. Not very romantic. He decided, F it, if we are going to get married I should do this properly. So he plans and makes a fancy meal, candles, wine, with champagne at the ready, the whole 9 yards. At what he thought was the right moment, got down on his knee, presented her with a ring, and asked her to marry him. She looked aside and said, actually, I've been thinking about that a little more. She turned him down. I learned about this when he called me up to vent. He was hot. Anger was his go-to emotion. She had already agreed it should have been a great moment for the both of them, but instead he felt humiliated and foolish. I couldn't blame him. After all, she had already agreed to get married. Talk about a slam dunk marriage proposal lol. They were still way into each other and did end up getting married once the kid was born. They've now been together for over 20 years, but at the time I thought that their relationship was done. I've had 3 or 4 no's depending on how you count. First one was initially a yes. We'd had a mostly long distance romance, and I proposed after a couple years, but we still hardly knew each other. After visiting her family and spending time learning less flattering things about me, I think I became tarnished in her eyes and she broke it off. Second one, I proposed once, she said yes, and then when she called her parents the next day they refused to recognize the engagement and pushed her to cut it off. I hadn't met them. Third time, same girl as second. We were engaged for a few months, even took our invites. We were apart for 3 months before the wedding, so I could complete a work project. During that time I had a crisis of conscience and felt like I needed a little more time. I asked her to push back the wedding, saying I loved her, but I wasn't quite ready. She simply called it off. Absolutely gutted me. And I'm sure it wrecked her too. I suspect her parents had some influence, but in the end I think it was probably for the best. Fourth time, new girl, 3 years later. We'd been best friends who fell into dating. I'd gotten a new job and was leaving town and wanted to take her with me to kinda start grown up life together. So I proposed marriage. It was too early in the relationship, 5 months, and it was a bad decision. She had a missionary opportunity that she took and left town. Fifth time I proposed, new girl in a new town. We'd been dating a year. She said yes, and we have 3 kids and 13 mostly great years together. TLDR, keep trying. Late edit. 4 kids now. My ex proposed to me 3 times. The first time we had been dating 2 years, and he was afraid I'd leave him when he was at basic training. He wrote me a letter and called me a few days later on pass. I said no, because I was still in high school and he didn't get along with my father. The second time was a few years after that. We lived together, had a son, and I was pregnant with our second son. He was late coming home from work, and I was kind of pissed, because I thought he was hanging out with a friend or something without letting me know, and our son had been giving me a hard time that day, and being pregnant I was tired. He came in and cut me off as I started beaching him out, and said, I know that I get on your nerves sometimes, and you get on my nerves sometime too. Want to spend the rest of our lives annoying each other? Then got on one knee, asked the question, and hugged me, our son, and the baby bump while I cried. I said yes. Fast forward another 7 months or so, he wasn't serious about planning a wedding, and refuses to tell our parents about our engagement, so I gave the ring back, and we broke up shortly afterwards. A few months after our breakup he picks up the boys for his days with them, and says I still have some stuff at the house if I want to pick it up. I go with him, and he shows me that he turned the spare room into a library for me, and then hands me one of my Harry Potter books, and it is cut open to the chapter The Unbreakable Vow, and the ring is sitting inside with the words, will you marry me? The best proposal I could dream of. I said no. Edit for more info. I said no, because we were already broken up, and grand gestures to save a relationship that has already ended usually only work in romantic comedies. Our relationship ended for many reasons, most of which I don't want to get into because he is still the father of my children no matter what. Not wanting to plan a wedding wasn't a big deal, but not wanting to tell anyone we were engaged was, but even that was the least of our problems. As for the reaction, well, I sobbed and collapsed into a coughing/crying spell, and then when he realized the answer was no, he started crying so hard that he started throwing up. So I rubbed his back while he threw up in the toilet and continued to cry, and then asked him to drive me home. A bit of a switch, but I technically denied my wife when she proposed to me. I was in college, she was in the military, and we were HS sweethearts. Started dating at 15. This story takes place when we were 19. I should also mention that she was somewhat homeless and stayed with my family after her mom passed when we were 17. Dad not in the picture, only other family was a couple sisters that more or less disowned her after mom passed. I'm just mentioning this because I talk about my family but don't mention hers, and that's why. She had just gone through boot and corps school, USN, and had gotten orders to her first duty station. She didn't want to go alone because she was nervous about it, so she asked me to drop out of college and move with her. She had about a week of leave between school and reporting down there, Sunday to the following Monday, and just about the whole week she pushed the issue. I was insanely depressed, was a bit suicidal due to poor performance in school, failing all my classes, and she knew it. Most the reason I was against it was because I knew my parents would be upset, and I, at that point, had only briefly been out of my home state a handful of times, so moving 2 states away with nothing lined up was pretty damn scary. But I had also had to be talked out of climbing the library tower and taking a nice leap, so what did I have to lose? I finally relented on Thursday night. My mom wept. My dad was fine with it because he's the one that had to talk me out of jumping. He worked at the college, so he saw how unhappy I was there pretty often. So Friday morning was pretty hectic. First, we had to get a marriage license and find a justice of the peace willing to do this on extremely short notice, as in, that day. We get the license, and I managed to find a job with an opening that afternoon, which by insane coincidence, is the same job that married my own parents. Next my mom and sister took her out to get a dress and get her all dolled up. I got my suit ready, and we got married around 1 p.m. Next stop was the DMV to get her a new driver's license with her new name, and since my mom worked there, we got that done in record time too. My parents took us out to dinner at a local steak place, and then paid for us to stay in a hotel for the night. Saturday was just packing. Lots and lots of packing, and planning the 8 to 10 hour drive to where we would be living. Sunday was just driving, and finding a cheap hotel to stay in, while we looked for a place to rent. Monday morning she reported, got told off, because she was supposed to contact her chain of command, before getting married between duty stations, but overall they just let it drop. Her mentor at the new command got us into the same trailer park he lived in, which was actually quite nice and pretty cheap. It was also only about 3 blocks from the hospital she was stationed at, and I would occasionally walk to work after I got a job there. That was almost 15 years ago. We've moved a few times, had some major ups and downs, even separated for about a year after we had our second kid, and have 2 boys aged 4 and 6. It's been a weird ride sometimes, but we make it work. I proposed to my ex-girlfriend earlier this year. We had a bit of a complicated history together. We'd been dating for a couple of years, but large chunks of that time we were forced to do a long distance thing, even in separate countries for a while. Because of the stress that long distance brings to the table, we went through some rough patches and called things off at one point. When I proposed, she got really emotional and said she couldn't say yes because she was too afraid that we wouldn't work out. I didn't understand it then, and I still don't understand it now. But that's what she said. I guess I feel for her on some level. It's hard being so focused on a negative outcome that you can't appreciate the positives in life. We talked for a bit longer that night after I proposed, and I ended the relationship altogether that night. It really was a crossroads do or die kind of moment. In hindsight, there were red flags all over the place. I guess hindsight is 20/20 in that case. But the bottom line is that we weren't meant to be together. I've since, very recently, started dating someone new. It's far too early to tell if my new lady and I have a future together, but the initial signs are extremely promising. My experience with my ex was an important one in shaping who I am. I don't think anyone should go through that experience. It's genuinely terrible, but at the same time I'm weirdly happy that it happened. I don't know, the whole thing makes no sense to me. We were best friends. We spent a year together after meeting again at college. It was the best year of my life. To this day I have never felt the simple joy and enthusiasm I had during those short months. I had a crush on her for a long time before that, but after seeing her again I fell deeply in love. I refrained from telling her for a long time out of fear for our friendship, but it just got too hard to live a lie, so I made a decision. I spent hours writing a heartfelt letter by hand, then mailing it to her. I'll never forget the feeling of flipping up the little red flag by my mailbox, my nerves making the world spin and my hand shaking as I sent the paper holding my hopes and dreams on its way. She got the letter a few days later and cried upon reading it, telling me when we saw each other next that it was one of the most beautiful things she'd ever read. She said she needed some time to think, and I left it at that. Soon after she told me that, while she will love me as a friend, she just doesn't feel anything deeper for me. I shrugged and said it was fine, that we could be friends and keep things the way they were. Unfortunately, I didn't understand the level of emotional anguish that comes with being one of the closest friends to the person you love more than life itself. Months passed and we began to talk less, hang out a few less times each week. She began dating a guy and moved in with him. I went to their housewarming and tried my best to remind myself that my feelings belonged in the past. It's a constant struggle to move on, but time heals all wounds, as they say. Hopefully I can find love like that again one day. Edit, misread the prompt, and missed the proposal aspect. Whatever, I'm leaving the post up, it was cathartic anyway. Finally I got the chance to share this one, here it goes. So a couple of years ago I was dating this wonderful woman who made me the happiest I've ever had been until then. We were together for 3 years and a half, until I finally found the courage to finally ask her. So I first asked my dad on advice on how to pop the question. He told me that first I should be completely honest with myself, if I was sure about it. My dad never really liked me being her boyfriend, and he told me that this was going to be a mistake. Of course, being the harder Sim, I ignored my dad's advice. Planed it for a month or so, told my best friends about how I wanted to propose to her. They were amazing help, and got me really excited about the whole thing. The place was a small cafe near town with an amazing overlook. I thought that was the right place to do it, so I asked one of my friends that knew a guy that worked there, and asked if we could rent out the place for an evening. After everything was set and prepared, I invited all of my friends for a get together at the cafe. Everything was going perfect. I felt like this was the moment I've been working so hard for. Then the sun is going down, and I took her hand, walked her over to the overlook, and I asked her if she would marry me. She told me that I needed to take off my mask. I didn't know what to say. After that, my so-called friends threw a net at me and restrained me. After that, they took off my monster mask, and I got arrested for robbery. Everything would worked out if it wasn't for this meddling kids and their stupid dog. TLDR, it turns out she had been seeing another guy called Fred, not his actual name, for 8 months, and was about to break up with me. A restraining order ensued for ghastly behavior, whatever that means. Gonna get buried most likely, but why not? In 2009 I was in the Army as a bomb squad technician. We did a lot of security for the POTUS, as the Secret Service does not have a bomb squad. So we would travel to the destination days before Obama would arrive, and basically start working immediately. Obama pushed back his trip by a few days, so I was basically on vacation in Singapore for 2 nights. One night myself and a few agents went out for drinks. I met the most beautiful French girl I had ever seen. All the other guys were trying to talk her up, so I tried to act cool and seem interested but not desperate. It paid off. We ended up spending the night drinking, dancing, talking, and making out. I knew she was the girl for me. We ended up going back to my hotel together and stayed up all night making love. She had to leave at 5 AM for her flight to Malaysia. I held her tightly in the early morning hours and told her I didn't want her to go. I asked her to marry me and move to Hawaii with me. She started to cry, saying that she wished we had more time together and that she couldn't do it. Then she left. I got her contact info, only to lose it somehow. 10 months later I was getting ready for another business trip, and I found her card in my luggage in a slip pocket. I looked her up on Facebook, and asked her to come to New York over Christmas and New Year's, to spend time with me. It was a Hail Mary. I couldn't believe it, but she said yes. We spent the next 10 days doing all kinds of stuff. It was amazing. Toward the end of her stay I told her I loved her and asked her to marry me. She said yes. I was the happiest man on earth. Due to my military service, immigration issues, and her work situation, she wasn't able to permanently move to the US until May of 2014. We visited each other a lot during that time. I even spent a year living in France with her after my retirement from the army. We also lived on Skype, often falling asleep together. Got married in June of 2014, and it's been great ever since then. Sorry for not formatting in paragraphs. We fell in love over a Cupid. She lived in Poland and I in the US. We were a 99% match out of like 2,000 questions. I messaged her thinking, well, this is the highest percent person I'll see on a site like this. I might as fucking well. As I'm sure you're all curious how you get a beautiful girl that's a 99% match to respond to you on a Cupid, I said, if you. And she said she liked our chances. She came to visit me over Christmas for 3 weeks. We confirmed that everything we were feeling was accurate and awesome. She went back to Poland. We decided we couldn't live without each other. So I quit my job and managed to convince them to let me do aspects of it remotely on an hourly basis. I sold everything I owned. I packed everything in 3 suitcases. I designed a ring based on a conversation we had briefly about how she liked practical things. She's an engineer. I flew to Poland for the first time and took to Ambien on 12-hour flight because I had already pulled an all-nighter to finalize my moving. They didn't kick in until I arrived. We got into her apartment and sat on the couch. I did what I thought was a proposal. She said no as I fell asleep with her on my lap. She said yes after she got to actually see the ring and hear me speak words that made sense. We are planning on getting married at some point. For now we are just enjoying making the impossible possible. In my story, can't say I was ever really asked. I was told. I started casually dating this girl I met at a summer job. I was 21 and she was 20. A month or so into it, she reveals she's going to school in the next state over. About a 7-hour drive. No big deal to me. I liked her a lot and we had fun. Cut to about 4 months in and we've had our ups and downs. Arguments that lead to her breaking up with me every so often. Then I drive across state lines to go make up with her. She apologizes every time and we get back together. One day she calls me on Skype and says she's ordering rings online. All I could see were red flags, but it didn't matter. I played along. She said she wanted people to know we were both taken while we weren't together. I rationalized it, saying so like promise rings? And she was like yeah, but they can be upgraded. Next time I visit she's wearing a diamond ring and gives me a silver band. We walked around campus wearing them. It felt so wrong. There was no real discussion. She just ordered rings online and gave one to me. She turns to me and says I can't wait to tell my mom we're engaged. I panic. I say we need to scale this back a bit and talk about it. She says I need to try harder. This goes on for quite some time. A month later, as things were finally getting back to normal, I get a phone call at 2 a.m. She tells me she's been wrapped on campus. I immediately drive down to her college. When I arrive, I tell her I'll help her report it to the campus police. At this point, her story began to change. It was her ex, not some random guy. She let him in. He didn't force his way in. I said I'd report it myself, and she psychically stopped me from doing so. I went home after that. Next day I get a big long text about how she cheated on me and just didn't know how to tell me. So she made up that story. Icing on the cake is she did again, and that's when she realized she wants to upgrade the rings and marry me. I cut off communication with her completely. She traveled abroad for the rest of the year, constantly trying to contact me. She stalked me for a bit. When she finally returned home, my sister ended up telling her off, and that's what did the trick. I took the rings to the woods and threw them in the mud. I attached a note with the story on it. Very dramatic, but it was therapeutic. Haven't told anybody I know about the rings. When I tell them this story, TLDR, I was an idiot. Crazy girlfriend ordered rings online and pronounced us engaged. She cheated and lied about it. I threw out the rings in the most dramatic way possible. She had always told me that if I ever proposed to her, she wanted her family to be there to see it somehow. So, we were on a vacation, and we were down in New Orleans, where the majority of her family lives. I already had the ring and was planning to do it there, so her family could be present. They were all on board with it and really liked me. So I had it all planned out. We were going to go visit the church where her grandmother got married and the house she grew up in, and it was gonna be this big thing and everyone was going to come out after. But the weather didn't cooperate. No way we are gonna walk around in the rain in nice clothes and get them all muddy. So that's out. Okay, backup plan. The next day, we were planning to go to Storyland with the kids. It's kind of a storybook themed amusement park. It's not the best option, but her family was going to be there, and I worked up this storybook romance speech. But the kids were assholes that morning, so she told them we weren't going to the park anymore. Damn it. So, I sat down with her grandmother and asked her opinion on how to do it. She suggested a simple picnic with the family on Lake Pontchartrain. That was perfect. Everyone was going to be there, and it was the exact same spot we had visited 2 years earlier. So we went to the picnic. But again, the kids were being assholes and wouldn't listen, and she was pissed off, and I couldn't seem to corral everybody together at once. So that was out. Okay, last chance to have everyone together. After the lake, we all went for a little drive through City Park. There's a little stage looking thing with nice lighting and pillars, and okay, this will work. It's my last chance because none of the family is available tomorrow. So, I walk with her up onto the stage and it's faking trashed. Garbage everywhere. We are sweaty as hell from walking around in the heat. She's cranky. But, this is the last chance to have her family present. So I pull the ring out of my pocket and, no, not here, not now. Are you faking serious? There's garbage over there. I'm sweaty. I'm miserable. The kids have been dicks. I want it to be memorable. So the ring goes back into my pocket and I accept defeat. The next day, she tells me to dress nice, that we were going for dinner, to apologize for shooting me down like that. So we call an Uber and go to a pretty nice Italian restaurant. We eat dinner, and I excuse myself to the bathroom. When I returned, she took me by the hand and looked me in the eyes and told me how much she loves me and how I've been a wonderful father to her children and how she couldn't imagine life without me. Then, she got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. She had shot me down because she was planning to propose the next day in a quiet restaurant without her family squawking and making a big deal of it. We are now engaged. The wedding is next year. I can't imagine life without her. Oh yay. I love telling this story. Here's my heartbreak story. Met a girl at a Halloween party I threw. Didn't know her, but my friends locked us in a room and said get to know each other. I was half drunk, but I tried to be friendly and chatted her up. Long story short, we started dating. And we loved each other. I made it a point to always tell her how beautiful she was and to always make her laugh at least once every day because it's part of who I am. I appreciate what I have and I don't take it for granted. I was happy 4 years and not one fight or argument. Some disagreements, but nothing like what my previous girlfriends had put me through. I know what a fight is 3 years dating. I have to move because I'm military, and that shit happens, and she decides to tag along, which I'm perfectly fine with. We didn't live together, yet because our living arrangements were fine the way they were, she went to college and lived at home with her dad. I lived on base with a roommate. It was just easier to wait till I get posted than to shuffle everyone's furniture around for nothing. Anyway, we move in together in the new place and find out little habits we didn't know about each other, but it's all groovy, and I start to consider proposing, since she wanted to be married before having kids. She dropped a few hints that I should propose when I was saving money for a ring. I finally have the money and try to think of the perfect time to do it. Christmas is cliché, but it'll do just fine. Because I had spent money on a ring, I couldn't afford to go spend Christmas with her family, so she flew, and I spent with my fam. I had a military flight to take me there, free of charge, so it wasn't all bad, but the plan would have been Christmas together at her fam and New Year's at mine's. She was supposed to get back on the 27th, but due to a huge blizzard her flight gets delayed, and she's stuck at her layover airport, and isn't home till 6 AM on the 28th. I got the call at 3 AM anyway. Yeah, she gets home late and tired. My plan was to propose when I go pick her up at the airport, but because of the circumstances, figured fuck it, let her sleep and just propose tomorrow, later today. Well, as we are laying in bed she's playing on her new iPad. The light from it prevented me from sleeping, so I popped open an eyeball and saw what she was looking at. Houses in her hometown. If you've ever been drunk you know that feeling when you're laying perfectly flat, but you feel like you're falling. In the 5 seconds between me realizing what I saw and speaking up, I feel like I feel through the earth itself. I felt tears swell up in my eyes. I felt afraid. I felt angry. I was confused. What the fuck is going on? I think to myself, hey, why? Our eyes meet. She says nothing but says everything. No, incredulous. You're faking joking, right? I was broken up with on the day I was going to propose. She was homesick. Too homesick to be happy spending the rest of her life with me. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. I told her about my plans. I showed her the ring. I faking sobbed. I wept. I felt a huge part of me dying. If you've never felt heartbreak, I envy you. I don't agree with it's better to have love and lost than to never have loved at all. No. I would much rather have never faking known her. I would rather she murdered me. I would rather she cheated on me. I would rather she died in a car crash than the way it went down. I'm a different person now than I was before. It's been 5 years, and I'm still single and not looking. Something broke in my brain that day. That hurt. Fuck that hurt. Fuck that hurt. It took me quite a while, maybe even 2 weeks, before I could even muster the courage to tell anyone what happened. I couldn't fall asleep without crying. Forget about even talking about it, fuck man. I don't even like thinking about how much crying I did in the span of that first month. The worst was going back to work and realizing I can't hide the truth forever. She was ready to change her Facebook status, and I was still trying to pretend like nothing was going on. We had a small workplace of people who all got along, maybe 20 people who all know each other. One person there knew my neighbor/coworker, and I asked him if he could break the news so I didn't have to cry at work. He did, thank fuck. A few people pulled me aside and asked if there was anything they could do and gave me their support, as it was evident shit was not alright with me, even though I tried to hide it. Weeks go by, and I'm finding coping mechanisms, which get completely faked up by the fact she's still living with me, because moving 1700 kms in winter's not feasible. She lived with me till March when spring started, and offered to share the bed. My bed. Go fuck yourself. I'm sleeping on the couch. 4 years and she wouldn't even fuck me anymore. Why the fuck would I want? Ugh. I'm still so fucking mad about that sheet still. Anyway, I remained civil and let her move out with her friends and Hugh family helping her while I sit on the couch. She hits the road the next day and assumes she's spending the night in my bed. No. This is my bed. I changed the bedding, got new pillows and everything. You don't live here no more. Go find somewhere else to live. I've spoken to her maybe 3 times since. Once was to give her a box of stuff the movers wouldn't take. I was visiting friends in her town anyway, so I obliged. It was awkward and I definitely regretted doing that favor. Another time was to ask if she had an email from our landlords where she claimed responsibility for the damages done to the carpet, and they said it was fine. They charged me $500 damage deposit for the damages. She didn't pay me back. Last time was because my Netflix account notified her my credit card was declined. Card expired, and it was linked to her email. I avoided talking to her so much I got a new Netflix and just paid it in double for 4 years. I told her to cancel it, which she did, but then she asked, so how have you been, what's new? I replied nothing. I have nothing to say to her. My life isn't what I want it to be because of her. I'm faked up. I'm doing okay, but I know I'm faked up, and I'm scared of women and I don't know what I want. I want and I don't want to be dating. I think it'll get me over it, but I think if it does get me over it, and I get heartbroken again, I'll just kill myself. I'm not suicidal, but if I go through that again, looking back it's so much less painful. But if I don't try I'll regret never having kids. I'm already hating myself for not having kids. I'm normal 99.99% of the time, and then I think of women and I faking. Can't get myself to just do it. Just Tinder up. Just eHarmony up. Just chat up the cute cashier you like. I'm faked up. I'm doing perfectly fine, but I'm faked up. Quick edit. In retrospect, it's good that it ended when it did. We wanted different things. If she'd said yes, and then we had kids, and then she realized she was homesick, and ruined my family and me never seeing my kids, because I'm military, she'd get custody. That would have been extra hard, but it doesn't make it any easier to accept. It was a grieving process for me. It sucked, and lots of self-hatred, even though it wasn't because of anything I did. I blamed her family for talking her into leaving me, which they apparently didn't. I blamed myself for being shitty, which I wasn't. It's just very hard to accept, even though it's for the best in the long run. Edit. Thought about how much crying I did. Cried at work. I was 20 and had found the one. She was amazing. I had never been able to talk with anyone as well as with her. We were in college. I had just transferred after wasting a lot of 2 years of college in booze and pot. I was there to start over, and I was rocking it, and met her. Only problem was, she was engaged, and going to graduate that year. Her fiancé was out of state, had already graduated. Lucky for me, he had turned into something of a jerk to her. We weren't really dating, keeping it in the friend zone, but we both were crushing on each other. They broke up that summer, and she moved back and got a job near me to see where it would go. I transferred again to be closer to her and lived a dream for a couple of years. Okay, I had some faults and some difficulties due to some hard things in childhood, but I was seeing a doctor about it, and I was alive and so happy. I then proposed and bought a small ring, still more than I could afford, and she said yes. I was ecstatic, but I began to fall apart. I had never been a stellar student. I lacked discipline, and my good part-time job often interfered, and I hid my failings from her. She planned a wedding, while I realized more and more how I had screwed up. I wasn't going to graduate in time, and could not tell her. I felt like a complete jerk. I was a complete jerk. Eventually she sensed something was wrong, and pressed me on it, and I came clean. And she was devastated. The engagement was off. I was devastated. We still loved each other a lot, but she was not going to heal quickly. She moved back home. I moved back to the previous college, trying to reboot again. And we stayed in touch. I was not a great long distance boyfriend either, but we stayed in touch. And I bombed that semester. I moved back home, 24 years old by now, and could not find any job at all. For months. But during that time, we stayed in touch. This was prior to cell phones and internet, just letters and expensive phone calls. And we drew closer again. I was humbled, but had learned a lot. And she had never fallen out of love with me, nor me her. She suggested I move out there to look for work. I raised several $100s doing medical tests. I was the guinea pig. Trying to wrap this up, I moved there. Found a decent job for no degree yet. We dated about a year there. I proposed again with a bigger ring. She said yes, and we got married. It hasn't been perfect, because I still had some damage to overcome, and she had some damage caused by me to overcome. We worked it out. We had 2 kids, now grown, and have been married for 27 years. And we still have a lot of that original magic. Met the dream girl of my life. She was perfect in my eyes and already had a promising career. I had my sheet together working, bringing in a steady income. We went out on a couple of dates at first, and after the 3rd date I moved into her apartment. At first it was great, we got along just fine. Then I started being selfish in the relationship and let things get bad. She went on antidepressants and tried to cope. She threatened to end the relationship and I promised to change. I would make progress, but then I would go back to old habits and didn't take very good care of myself. We both worked a lot and we weren't spending quality time together like we used to. It felt like we were becoming more like roommates. I wanted to save what we had because I felt like, even though we were going through so many problems, I didn't want to risk losing her. So I bought a ring and proposed in front of my family. She sounded like she wanted to get hitched and do things properly. She did say yes, but I'm pretty sure it was only because I put her on the spot. Months go by, nothing much has changed. I'm still the same asshole she has been dealing with for months. We start getting into more fights and tells me I need to grow up. She ends up pen paling with some guy while we are still together. We get into one big fight one night and I sleep on the couch. The next morning she heads off to work and leaves me a text message saying I can't take it anymore. I don't care, move your sheet out tonight. Just like that I go to work feeling miserable. I move back in with my parents and sleep on the couch just trying to figure out where everything went wrong. I was so blind and stupid that I didn't see the writing on the wall. I had been taking advantage of her this whole time. The engagement ends. She keeps the ring and other things. I'm just thinking, at this point, that my life is over. Fast forward today. We are still friends. She ends up with her pen pal, and he treats her better than I ever could. I've been single ever since, and have a hard time with commitment. It gave me the opportunity to rebuild and restructure my life. I had a lot of growing up to do still, and I had been passing the buck for so long that it was probably better for me in the long run. I've become more responsible with money, more independent and less needy of other people. On the other hand, I can't find another girl like her, and I get the feeling I never will. I'm happy for her though. We still talk occasionally, but it's usually at random spurts. She is recently engaged to the other guy and I wish them both the best of luck. I had known this girl since I was in junior high. We'll call her R. I had always wanted to date her, but she was too far up her own as to date a guy like me. Many years went by, and we hadn't seen each other or even talked. I heard she had gotten married and had a couple kids. Jump forward several years. Her sister, we'll call her B, comes into my work for an interview and gets the job. B and I talk a bit off and on, and she begins dating my roommate. They are hitting it off really well when B asks if I'd be interested in double dating with her, and I thought this was just a friend's thing since I was married. So we go out on this double date and things go really well. Apparently I had just gotten a divorce and was looking to get back out in the dating world. She and I didn't have much in common, but she was a crush from long ago, so I figured what the hell, let's see how far this can go. We dated for about 3 months. When I started staying with her every night, sex was great. I pampered her like a princess and she returned that sentiment with being a lazy slob that never did anything, but I couldn't see that at the time. I cooked and cleaned for her, kept up with her kids and mine, all while she lounged around the house collecting social security and child support from her ex-husband. Christmas came around, and I showered her and her children with gifts. Made it the best Christmas ever according to her kids. Valentine's Day comes around. We had been talking about marriage for a while. I take her out to an extravagant meal, then out on a late night walk downtown. We were walking along the canal in front of the place where we had our first date when I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. She declined. She told me she wasn't ready yet and still needed time. Around March she had to move out of the house she was renting due to the original owners needing the house back and not wanting to resign the lease. I talked her into moving in with me as I owned my own house. I cleaned up my house and got everything ready for them to move in. Sold and got rid of a number of my things to make sure she and her kids had room for their things. Everything was going great for the first week or two of her living there. Then her kids started being very disrespectful to my things. I had been a bachelor for many years, living only with my daughter, and had accumulated many expensive pieces of electronics and a large collection of video games. The number of facts they gave about my things was 0. I tried to ask them to be careful and not break them as they were expensive, and she scolds me and tells me kids will be kids. This made me angry, but I just blow it off. The next weekend she wants to go out with her friends for a girls' night out and asks me to watch her 2 kids, her friends' 2 kids and my daughter, so they can go out. I told her sure. The night arrives and her friend shows up with her 2 kids. Then another friend shows up with her 2 kids as well. So now I have 7 kids there at my house. She asks if I have any cash for the bar. I tell her no, as I just got done paying all the bills. Then she freaks out on me for not giving her money because she had told her 2 friends that she would take care of it. All 3 of them are single moms with no jobs living off of alimony and child support. I suggested the kids could play in their rooms and they could stay there at the house and drink and hang out, but that didn't go over well either. They all 3 stormed out of the house. The kids run amok as 4 of the 7 were just absolute unpunished hellraisers. I finally get them to bed and I sit down to play some video games. 2 AM rolls around, then 3, 4, 5 and they still haven't gotten back. I try to call thinking maybe something was wrong. The phone answers and all I can hear in the background is yelling and screaming, then the phone goes dead. I call back a few more times, but it goes straight to VM. I get pissed and finally just go to bed. I wake up at 10 AM to someone banging on the door. I answer it and find she had forgotten her keys. I let them in and try to find out about the previous night. Apparently they had been at the bar and guys were buying them drinks, then they asked them to come to an after party with them. They went to be nice since they were buying them drinks all night. It was at this time I knew it was a red flag number 1. The next weekend rolls around and she is going out yet again, not showing up till the next morning. This continues for several weeks. I begin getting distant and not caring anymore, but being the nice guy I am, have not kicked her out. The first week of May comes around. My birthday is that week and I asked if we could go do something. She says no, that she already made plans with her friends and figured I'd watch the kids for her. I flat out lost it. I told her how I really felt about everything she'd been doing lately and how I felt used. She at that point told me she thinks she's pregnant. We hadn't slept together since February and I knew she had had her period since then. I called her out on it and she swore it was mine. I told her I thought she had been cheating on me and she got majorly pissed. She then told me she wanted to break up and she knew we could never be together. She asked if she could stay with me for a bit while she got her stuff together. I told her for the sake of the kids, that would be fine, but she would have to start paying rent. I allowed her to sleep on the couch for almost a month. I asked her weekly how she was coming along on getting her stuff out, and she always replied next week. Finally at the end of June I told her she needed to get her sheet and get. Each month she would call and ask if I was going to pay for her to have our baby. I told her to get a paternity test and prove to me it's mine. We had the paternity test done and surprise surprise, not mine. I have not talked to her since. I had a major crush on a girl for years, and we dated off and on, but it never seemed to work out. I eventually moved away to another city for a while, and decided to join the army. I let her know about my decision and our relationship was rekindled. It was something I didn't want to let go of, but I had already finalized my entry into the service. As a Hail Mary, as another user described it, I proposed. She had the biggest smile on her face. I had never seen anything like it. She knew the timing wasn't right so she said we would have to wait on it. I went off to basic training, and we wrote each other every day. Our connection was never stronger. However, all my tales of army life lead her to enlist in the Navy, which she informed me of about 2 weeks before graduation. Now how is that supposed to work out? We keep in contact and are supportive of one another. After all, we still have time. Fast forward about 6 months and we are talking on the phone. She lets me know that she has something to tell me. I press the record audio button on my phone. She says in a giddy voice, "I'm getting married." My response was simply, "Oh, really?" She said that if she got married, she would be able to get out of the barracks and into base housing as well as get tax breaks and other perks. So she was going to marry a guy who was also in the same field of work, out of convenience. I got really drunk after the conversation and ended up playing back the recording for some fellow squad mates. I still remember one of them saying, "You can hear the exact moment when your heart breaks." 12 years later the two of them are still married and have kids, and are living a fulfilling life together. In classic tragic fashion I never really moved on. I did get married to another person a few years back, but it didn't last very long. I loved the person, but was never in love with them. That feeling was always somewhere else. A tale of almost, but not. Dated a woman I met in college. I fell for her the moment I saw her, but we were both dating others. It took until the end of college 3 years later to start dating. We did. I eventually moved from New York City to Albany to be with her. Life was good, so I thought. I started to plan on asking the question, as I was also preparing a surprise birthday party for her. Her family went through with the party for her. I didn't attend. I made the arrangements with a restaurant, talked to her parents, who said, "We appreciate the respect, but ultimately, it is her choice." It is just after Christmas. Visited my parents, went to the Diamond Exchange in Manhattan with them, picked out a stone, started working on a setting. Things going great, or so I thought. I found out later she was unhappy and had expected me to change. What you ask? I never got an answer to that. In her eyes the relationship was dead around Halloween. She ended it early January. She didn't want to ruin the holidays. When she did break the news, I cried like a baby and was destroyed. She didn't like seeing me that way. I told her how. Do expect me to respond? I love you. I moved here for you. Gave up a solid civil service job for you. I made plenty of sacrifices. She didn't have an answer to that. In retrospect, it hurt bad. Very bad. I considered suicide. It was awful. We still lived in the same apt. I moved out within 3 weeks. We worked at the same company. Thank God we worked in different areas. I rarely saw her. In the end, I feel it was a lesson. I'm now with someone whom I adore. That was nearly 20 years ago. I've had several long-term relationships since, but the woman I'm seeing now is now whom I want to be with. We aren't exactly alike, but we complement each other well. And the love is deep, honest, and there. I'm planning to ask her in a couple of months. This one's a pretty sad story to be honest. It still hurts to think about. I was with a girl for about 4 years. We met in university, we had some shared classes, started going out, and eventually we stayed together for almost 4 years from then on. Did everything together. We went on a lot of trips, traveled the world, because we both loved travel. So when the time came that I knew I wanted this to be forever, I decided it would be a good idea to propose while we were away somewhere nice. So I booked us 2 tickets and off we went to Iceland. Bought a ring, stuck it in my carry-on, and Bob's your uncle. We had a lovely time in Iceland. So my plan was to go up to the glaciers, because you can do this thing there where you take ATVs up to ride around and see all the glaciers. So we did that, and when we stopped for lunch, I got down on one knee and took out the ring and popped the question. And honest to God, she looked at me and said, I need one thing from you before I can say yes. So I looked at her, thinking to myself, okay, this is a bit weird but okay, and asked her, what do you need? And she looked at me and said, I'm gonna need about 350. Well, it was about that time that I realized that the woman I had loved for 4 years was a prehistoric creature from the Cretaceous period. So it wasn't no woman, it was that damn Loch Ness monster trying to trick me into giving him 350. So I said, goddamn you Loch Ness monster, I ain't giving you no 350. I was bartending a few years back near a university. It was a popular bar to be sure, but it's just a neighborhood watering hole. I had a young couple come in and sit at a high top for a mid-afternoon meal, the bar otherwise empty in the lull between lunch and dinner. The sun streaming in through tinted windows highlighted dust suspended in the still and beer staled air. Muted football highlights on the TVs, manager closing out the morning till in the corner, sticky plastic menus wedged between the wall and ketchup bottles. I finish washing the last of the glasses from lunch and wipe my hands on the towel that's been hanging off my belt since morning. She's on the bored side of indifferent and wearing her mid-semester Tuesday's best, a second string ensemble of malware that says it's been a few days since she did laundry but wasn't yet forced to get creative. He slumped in his chair, vibrating with a stoner's anxiety and a style that clearly rolled out of bed and into the passenger seat of her car with him. They're kids, but she orders a gin and tonic. He shows his first sign of lucidity as he watches me check her ID, then retreats and mutters something to the table about a water and lemon. Their lunch was mostly uneventful. In the midday crawl I had time to observe their interactions to some degree. There were probably 4 of them in total. Most of the time was passed silently sipping her drink more slowly than the ice was melting, picking at her wings with a fork, him staring at his basket of fries as the ketchup sagged to the bottom. Their eyes wandered lazily but strategically, using every inanimate excuse available in that room to avoid landing on the pair on the opposite side of the table. They did nothing and needed nothing, and their scene eventually faded to a still life swallowed in the noise of the Americana hung from the walls above them. Suddenly my eye detected movement, the way a safari cat must, revealing once again their presence. One sweat-panted knee planted on the mop-streaked floor, empty hands clasped, as if mid-prayer as he looked up and mumbled at a girl frozen to her bar stool. Wide-eyed, she slowly wiped wing sauce away from her lips and matched his gaze as she dragged her chin excruciatingly side to side. She pointed to his empty chair. They speak a few words inaudible to me, and again silence. Time resumes, the earth lurches into rotation, I get back to work. I'm eventually summoned by the Pavlovian tap of an empty highball on varnished wood as she steps up to the bar. My eyes must have spoken. He just proposed to me, in a wings joint, without a ring, and then asked me to pay. I wished her good luck as she slapped a bill on the bar and left without him. He sat there for quite some time doing nothing, showing no emotion or anything to distinguish him from a wax figurine. He just stared at his soggy fries, slice of lemon still perched on the rim of his glass. Eventually he rose and wandered to the bar. Hey man, I'll give you the rest of my dime bag if you can give me a ride to my cousin's. I was the one proposed to, and while I initially accepted, a week or so later I gave him the ring back and declined. We were together 5 or 6 years with a month split in between. When he asked, he caught me completely off guard. I was drunk, tired, and if I recall correctly, had just watched my Phillies lose their 10,000th game to the Cardinals. 10,000. I remember calling my family and friends to tell them, and they all sounded so down about it, which really made me think. I think having everyone so unexcited opened my eyes and made me wonder what they saw that I didn't. I started looking at my relationship more objectively and realized what a lazy bum my now fiancé was. Couldn't be bothered to clean anything if his life depended on it, let alone himself, and had no respect for the work I did around the house. Would throw trash on the floor, sit in front of the computer all day, and generally made zero effort to do anything that didn't involve staring at a screen all day. He had no ambition whatsoever and didn't seem to want anything more in life. He refused to drive, so I was his chauffeur, refused to fly, so we never really left the city unless I was driving, and generally was a lump. So, essentially, I was taking on mothering an adult man. Was this the future I imagined for myself? Living in the same apartment, nothing changing, cleaning up after this person until I dropped dead. When I finally realized, I noped right the hell out as fast as I could. Fast forward almost 10 years later, he is still living in the same apartment, still single, still refuses to drive, and is seemingly embracing the neckbeard life. Me. I ended up marrying a Cardinals fan, and have never been happier. We had talked about it since we met up. This is where we were in our lives. This is what we wanted. We were each the person the other wanted to build a life with. We were both very supportive, and we were both coming from a sensitive spot in each of our pasts, so we appreciated each other all the more. I asked. She laughed because she thought I was joking. Even after it was obvious that I wasn't. You know, ring in hand, looking directly in her eyes, the whole shebang. She complained for weeks after that, demanding to know why I wouldn't do it again, whether or not I was going to ever do it again, or if she'd just have to live with her choice. I waited for that nonsense to die down, and then waited some more, until I felt comfortable doing it, and wanted it again. We were also having a baby at the time, so she insisted I only wanted to propose for the sake of the baby, and turned me down again. Things started going downhill after that. She was very self-centered, refusing to have even the simplest of conversations about some anxiety issues I was having. I went to pick her up from an accident she got in. She complained that I didn't sound like I wanted to help her. I wanted to help plan our daughter's first birthday. She shut me out at first, then blamed me for not being interested enough after she'd already planned it. I wasn't making enough at my non-minimum wage, full-time job. I didn't fix the garbage disposal quick enough, despite not knowing how. I didn't get rid of the ants that came into the house, despite cleaning up the house and wiping them away when they appeared. I broke it off. I went on a date with somebody else, and she tripped out. Accused me of not being around for my family, even though I was there every night after work, making the dinner she insisted was my responsibility, cleaning the house she thought was disgusting, making the plans she refused to participate in. Then she said she'd break my computer. Then she said she wouldn't have any problem taking my daughter from me in court. Then she said would throw me in jail for false accusations of domestic abuse. I still wish I could have worked with her long enough to fix things, but there is a difference between a desire to help and fear for my own safety. She trapped herself in her own hell, and I'm not the person who can help her with that. As a result, I haven't seen my daughter in a month. I was unable to see her for her first Halloween or her first birthday. I just hope they're both happy. I met my wife a long time ago back in college. We were very close friends for a long time, and then one day I realized that I was totally into her. But did nothing about it, because I didn't want to ruin our friendship. I never said anything to anyone about this, except my mother. A short time after that, my roommate and best friend admitted that he was into her. So I figured that she was off the table at that point and gave up, but I still had strong feelings for her. Eventually, she confessed to me that she was into me. This was right after I had hooked up with her roommate who was also her best friend. We ended up getting together and this caused a lot of temporary drama. It was a very passionate beginning to a relationship. One day, after only a few months of dating, we were sitting out on the quad under a beautiful blue sky. She was laying with her head on my stomach and we were both just laying there, staring up and talking. It must have been at least a couple of hours, right there in the middle of a lot of people, but I felt as if it were just her and I. At that moment I realized that she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Without really thinking about it, I kind of interrupted the conversation and said, "Will you marry me?" She sat up, looked at me sort of cross-eyed, and said, "Are you serious?" And I said yes. She said, "It's far too soon for that." I wasn't really upset because she was right, but I knew I was right too. That was in 1998. We moved in together in 2003, and it wasn't until 2010 that we ended up getting engaged and married in 2011. She asked, "Why did it take so long for you to propose?" And I explained that I had already been rejected once and had thought we were both comfortable with the state of our relationship. She totally didn't even remember that day. After spending 4 or so years together and both having graduated college and working, decided we should travel the world a bit. Of course, we had had the usual talks about getting married, kids, and a family together. We even, at this point in our lives, shared cars and had a house and dog together. An opportunity arose to work in Japan for a year and we jumped at it. Due to issues with leaving her job, I took off 4 months in advance of her. Those 4 months were a blast in Japan. It's hard to even put into words. I really dug in learning the language and culture. However, during that whole time apart, one still managed to keep almost daily contact with my girlfriend. When the day came for her to arrive, I trained it up to Tokyo to receive her. I was so stoked to finally get to see her again, albeit nervous because I had changed so much physically since I had last seen her. I had gone from a hefty 215 pounds to something around 180. She had come with her sister and return ticket home. We enjoyed that week she was here, and in my bliss I was completely oblivious to the idea that she would be flying home with her sister, and that it wasn't just a convenient way to book their flight. Certain factors surrounding the job made me believe this. After a fun-filled week of travel ended, she announced she wouldn't be staying in Japan, and that she'd like to split up. My knee-jerk reaction was a propose. I got down on one knee and proposed, ringless and fighting back a flood of emotion. She was the girl I had wanted to live the rest of my life with, no doubt about it. Yet, here she was marooning me in Japan. Needless to say how it all turned out. The rest of the story can write itself. I will say, however, that in 2 years of self-pity and hanging around Japan, I really learned to like the place as a home. 6 years passed and now I'm happily married to my beautiful Japanese wife. The story I have goes back over a long period of time. It's still really unclear to me, and in some ways it still goes on. It's been a hard thing to deal with, and I'm hoping that maybe writing about it will help me move forward. This is going to be lengthy, but I'll try to TLDR it at the end. When I was a senior in high school, I met a girl who was an incoming freshman. She was older for her class, and I was younger for mine, so there was only like a 2 to 3 year age difference between us. We never dated at time, but we had a lot of mutual friends and hung out with the same group. We stayed in contact while I was in college and still hung out every now and again. As the other friends went their own ways, we still stayed in contact. We were pretty close friends and just enjoyed each other's company. Starting my junior year in college, she started dating some guy that was a total asshat. He would leave her at parties, scream at her all the time and cheat on her. She was fed up with him one day and came over to hang out because I had always been supportive of her in the past. We were talking and she ended up kissing me. I was really confused and didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be the other guy. She was a close friend. She was still in high school, etc. There was a whole wave of emotions that occurred at the time I just wasn't ready for, but I knew I cared about her and didn't want to ruin our friendship. Part of me wanted something more with her, but there were too many variables involved at the time. I was honest. I said I really cared about her, but I didn't want to be the other guy and that it just wouldn't be a good idea. It just kinda ended there. We didn't really have contact with each other for like 2 to 3 years. We were still FB friends, but neither of us never really posted anything. This is important later. Time went by, and I started dating another girl. We were together for 2 years, but the relationship began to get stale. I was going to move away for grad school and I didn't really see a future. I'm looking on FB, and I see a status of hers that sounds like she is kinda on the down and out. So I message her, and we start chatting. It's like we picked up where we left off. It was crazy. We went out for coffee. She's only 20 at this point, and I'm 22, so we didn't go out for drinks. This again is important later, and had a great time. She was having an awesome college career and was in student leadership. She had ditched the asshole, but was just stressed with all of the things she had going on, thus the lamenting FB status. As the night came to a close, we were sitting in the car after, and we start kissing. We missed each other a lot and kinda started up a little summer fling. We hung out like every other day and just had a damn good time. The thing was it never gravitated around being sexual, and I was okay with this. I simply enjoyed just being with her again. As the summer progressed, our relationship began to grow. We talked about how we knew each other for like 7 years at this point, and how crazy it was that we could pick up and have such a great time. She was always extremely flirty and upbeat, and we got to the point where we began talking about sex. She got extremely serious and said she didn't want to. I asked why, and she said the asshole she was dating gave her HPV because he had been cheating on her. She was extremely sensitive about the issue and said none of the shots or remedies had been able to help her. She didn't want to have sex or do anything sexual because she didn't want me to get it. I understood and we didn't do anything. Like I said, I was generally okay with this because I cared about her so much. In any event, the summer came to a close, and as such I moved away, and it was difficult. I tried to keep in touch, but she wouldn't write back. She had her 21st birthday party and never let me know, so we could celebrate or anything like that. Another year went by without hearing from her, so I moved on, started dating other people. I saw on FB she started dating another guy, but it was cool, because I was dating other people too. Nothing really serious. Well, around Thanksgiving of 2011 I called her and she answered. We conversed for like an hour. It was great to hear from her again. I asked her to a Thanksgiving event with my friends and she agreed to come. I drove back home for the holidays and met up with her, and once again it was like old times. We were hanging out at the party, having a beer on the front porch, remembering the good old days, etc. It was midway through the party and we were by no means drunk, but had a couple to the point where everyone was more social. I offhand had mentioned, gosh, we've been friends for 8 years. It was crazy we weren't married yet, to which she replied, well, let's do it. I was kinda stunned. I said, really? You're screwing with me? And she says, nope. Let's do it next summer. Needless to say, I was on cloud 9. The rest of the evening we were ecstatic. We didn't tell anyone, but we were just excited. After dropping her off that evening I called her the next day and asked if she was for real, and she said yes. We spent the rest of the break together and tried figuring out how to make it work, even though I lived 5 hours away from her. But here's where the weird things started to happen. After returning back to school, I tried to get in touch, but she never made attempts to contact me again. She wouldn't even set her Facebook status to in a relationship, a petty thing I know, but that was a big deal at the time. I would always call, but she would never call me. I would make arrangements for her to come down, and she would never show, because she had to work. It was always this one-sided involvement, where there was never any efforts from her to reciprocate. Then without warning I see she is dating another person. I have no idea what's going on, and so I just do my thing and let it go. I started dating again, and have been in my current relationship for 4 years. Since then she's called and we've chatted, but have remained pretty much distant. I would love to sit down and actually talk about what the hell happened, but at the same time I just want to move forward. I think about it a lot. I don't know if it was her, or me, or us, or the timing, or what have you. It's always been an unanswered chapter of my life that rears its head when she attempts to make contact. It's like every time I think I'm where I need to be, she calls and it shakes my world up. I'm really tired of having this time of the year unwind, because it brings up all the feelings I had when we were talking about getting married. I still think about her a lot, and I don't know what to do. I want to move forward in my current relationship, but always think about what if. I'm really happy with the person I'm currently dating. I trust her, she's reliable and we care about each other very deeply. I just always think about what it would have been like with her, and it's just been something I have to live with. As I write this, I feel a little better. So thanks for spending some time for those who have read it. TLDR, a lifelong friend said she wanted to marry me but she would never actually pursue a relationship. Started seeing this girl my senior year of high school. She was cool, and we really never had to work on our relationship. We kind of just fit. Well, after I graduated I joined the military, and we weren't together long enough for me to commit to a marriage, so I decided to try and take the long distance relationship approach, and she was totally cool with it. We were doing great, and she would come visit me about 4 to 5 times a year while I was in the military. As the years went on I felt it was right about time for us to take the next step in our relationship. We had this thing where she always wanted to be called princess, so of course I had to be all romantic and stuff and buy her a princess cut ring. It was stupid expensive, and it was obvious to everyone but me that I was blind in love. Well, she comes to visit me for a few weeks, and about halfway through I proposed to her, fully confident that she would say yes. Well, she says no, FML, right? So I ask her, okay, why? And her response was, I feel like you are proposing for the wrong reasons. So we walked around in silence for a bit, and then we sat down and talked about it a little more. This woman has the audacity to ask me if she can wear the ring, even though she said no to me. Tries telling me, please unmask, psychopath, just until we get home. It is so beautiful. I reply with obvious hell no, and the week we had left was the most awkward week of my life. Come to find out she was cheating on me for the past few months, and it wasn't the first time. Just the first one that I had found out about. Needless to say, it was a miracle she said no. Here's a story for ya. It happened to an older gentleman I once met in Canada. It started in the late 70s, when he was in his first year of college. One day he was sitting alone in his dorm room, studying, when all of a sudden the door flew open and his Japanese friend pushed a Japanese girl that he hadn't seen before into his room. "She for you," he cried as he dashed out the room, leaving the two students staring at each other, confused as all hell. They became friends, strictly platonic, and through her broken English and his even more broken Japanese, they formed a bond. After the semester was over, he dropped her off at the airport and casually said that if she was ever in town again to look him up. Oh, and one more thing he casually and jokingly threw in, who knows? Maybe we could even get married. She flew back to Japan, and our protagonist continued living his normal college life for about another year, when one random Wednesday afternoon, he was sitting alone in his dorm room again, studying, and she burst in through the door. Our protagonist nearly screamed. "You said you would marry me, so here I am," she proudly announced. Our protagonist looked like he had seen a ghost. What was this girl thinking? He had meant that as a joke. Was she serious? She must be, because why else would she travel 4,700 miles to see him out of the blue? Well, shit. He was gonna have to do this. He was going to have to keep his end of the promise. So he went home, and at age 19 announced to his right-wing conservative traditional family that he was going to marry a Japanese foreign exchange student. His father scoffed. "I used to kill those little buggers in Korea." Needless to say, the news was not well received. Nonetheless, they reluctantly gave him their blessing. They were married in 1980. They had a son, and lived a quiet life in Vancouver for 25 years. They were never quite the love-a-dove couple, because you've got to consider their origins and the circumstances under which they married each other. He began spending more time at work to avoid her, and she began spending more time with her friends to avoid him. Their son grew up, moved out, and began his own life. One day at the quarter-century mark, the bride sat down at the dinner table and confessed to her husband that she wanted to go home. Without missing a beat, he replied, "You want me to help you pack?" The rest is history. They untied the knot just as quickly as they had tied it, and as of this writing, they haven't heard from each other in 11 years. We were together for nearly 10 years. The conversation of getting married happened many times, but there was always some reason on his end why it couldn't happen. Looking back, it was overly obvious that the idea just didn't excite him, which is fine. Marriage isn't for everyone, but at least be honest that it's not what you want. We started having horrible fights, and I even tried to break the relationship a couple of times. He always managed to talk me into coming back. Our families had no idea what was going on with us, so it really wasn't surprising When my mom let it slip one day that he had asked for our family ring, my heart just sank to my stomach. This was not going to end well, because after recent events I had no intention of saying yes. I didn't really know how to let him know I knew he had the ring. It was really nerve-wracking thinking about it. Eventually I just decided to break the ice with letting him know I knew he had a ring and let that lead into the I cannot say yes part of the conversation. He was livid. I ended up leaving the house because I honestly didn't know what to expect from him next. The next morning I came back home and he was pretending like nothing had happened. He told me I just needed more time to think on things because it was obvious I didn't know what I wanted. Nope. He left the house for the day and I took what little I needed and got the hell out of there. The last time I saw him in person was at a restaurant to get the ring back. He was very mad that I didn't show up by myself, but begrudgingly gave me the ring back. Every once in a blue moon he will contact me and act like we are best buddies still. It is weird. But yeah, that is my story. I have my grandmother's story, which ended well depending on how you look at it. My grandmother, my dad's side, and grandfather were high school sweethearts. They adored each other. They dated a while, all through high school I believe, or at least 3 years, and wanted to get married, but couldn't because my grandfather was going off to the military. They agreed to separate and move on. Only problem was my grandmother was pregnant, but didn't tell my grandfather. They moved on, he in the military and my grandmother dating, and ultimately marrying another man, who raised the child, my father, like his own. I was told he was an amazing stepfather who would did anything for her. Sadly, he passed away, and my grandmother after a few years began dating another man, marrying him as well. He also passed away. After all this time, my grandfather returned and met back up with my grandmother, rekindling their love for each other after all those years. They dated and got married. My grandfather being a retired police officer and such had a decent pension, as well as my grandmother's money after she retired, so they moved from my state of Ohio to Pennsylvania up into the deep mountains, and built their dream home from scratch, land and all, cutting down trees in the process. Only a few years into this star-crossed lovers escapade, my grandfather's heart valve went and needed surgery. I was probably 8 at the time, so my dad was obviously a grown man, well in his late 30s early 40s. After all the hassle, he got heart valve replacement surgery and the surgery went well, but ultimately passed away in the hospital. At his funeral my grandmother revealed to my father that the man he was looking at in the casket was actually his real dad and not her first husband. My grandmother and grandfather agreed to not tell my dad he was his father until one of them was to die, and to let him live a happy life not worrying about where his real dad was. If she passed, he'd tell him he was his dad. If he passed, she would, and in this case, it was the latter. I have never seen my dad cry that much in my life, and just writing this makes me tear up thinking about him and how he felt that day. Fast forward 15 years and my grandmother is still in the house they built up there in the mountains, literally barely keeping it, and going bankrupt because she refuses to leave their home up there and move back. She has dated a couple guys, but has not married again, and I'm willing to bet never will again. My dad has had his share of health issues, but is still here, and I cherish this memory because it makes me appreciate the time I have with my father more than ever. My parents have a lovely one. My folks had been a thing for most of college and a few years after, even though they were never boyfriend and girlfriend. Dad feels after 5 years of this he is ready to ask mom. He asked her to the Marine Corps ball, which is a huge deal. The evening comes, and they are dressed to the nines. Dad in his marine dress blues and mom in a stunning dress. I've pics. Once the evening is rolling along, Dad takes mom to the middle of the dance floor, drops to one knee, and proposes. Mom just stares at him and says she doesn't think so, and walks away to the table for the rest of the evening. Flash forward 2 weeks and mom realizes she hates her job. Her cat is evil incarnate. Her name was Jezebel for Pete's sake. And she realized she was an idiot for rejecting the man she's loved since the day they met. She goes to his apartment to beg him back, only to be greeted by his roommate, later best man, who had been dealing with my heartbroken dad. Dad decided the best way to deal with his broken heart was to take his unit out into the field for drills that weekend. Mom cleaned their entire bachelor pad and made his favorite dinner of enchiladas. When he got home that night, Mom begged for him to forgive her. He took her back, but made her wait a bit before they got engaged. Now 3 kids and 31 years later, they are happily together bugging each other about TV show choices. A bit after my divorce, I began dating this professional chef who had recently moved to my area. I was not looking for serious, just something fun and distracting, which he was, for a second anyway. 3 weeks after our first date, he told me he loved me. I was flabbergasted. I could not say it back. A few weeks after that, he told me I had him thinking about marriage. He asked me, and I turned him down gently. We kept seeing each other, but I was weary of the speed he was wanting to move, because that sometimes is a signal for issues he may have. Fast forward a few weeks, and he gets an early birthday card from one of his friends from his home state asking if she could fly down and visit him. Because I'm not a possessive or jealous person, I saw no problem. He even wanted us to meet. I was at his place a little early on the night he went to pick this friend up at the airport. It was late, so I fell asleep. I woke up to the sound of a woman's voice calling my name and asking me to wake up. This woman walked into the bedroom where I was and announced, "Mississippi girlfriend and Virginia girlfriend need not ever meet. Please leave." I didn't fly all this way to sleep in the extra bedroom. I told her to get out. She did. While I packed, I asked the guy to come in and explain what was going on. He could not. I asked why he wanted me there when he brought her home. Still nothing. He just stared at his feet. As I was walking out, Virginia girlfriend, much older than me, by the way, stopped me and apologized for her rudeness. She said she should never have spoken to me like that. I asked her if she knew about me, and she said she did. She even told me that, on the way back from the airport, she begged him to tell me about her. When he would not, she asked that he take her back to the airport. I told her that I did not know about her, and that spoke volumes about her relationship with him. I then turned to him, tossed his key back to him, and walked out. This would have been perfection, except I had left my electric fryer at his place and had to go back to get it. When I buzzed the gate to get him to let me in a few days later, I announced myself as Mississippi girlfriend. He told me he was sorry. He hurt me more than anyone had ever. Laughing, I told him not to flatter himself. I left with my fryer and never saw or heard from him again. This is still the most amusing breakup ever. Bullet dodged. TLDR, Mississippi girlfriend met Virginia girlfriend. We were high school sweethearts. I met him when I was 15 and he was 16 when I was 23, and after him suggesting that we should get married one day on more than one occasion, I finally asked him to marry me. It was really lame. We were in the car driving home from dinner or something, and I just flat out said, "Will you marry me?" He was unfazed and replied, "Sure." The rest of the ride home was us just talking to each other. So over the course of the next 8 months I found a friend that would marry us for free. I paid her with money I hid in a thank you card for her and made her a wallet anyways. We each bought an inexpensive wedding band for each other, and I found a place on the beach where we could have a quick ceremony for free. Finally I invited our closest friends and family. My mom and dad, my brother and his wife, his dad and stepmom, his little brother, my best friend, and his best friend. All hell broke loose when his dad found out though. Turned into a shitstorm of him, his father, sending me nasty text messages, telling me I was a child, that I shouldn't be rushing into getting married so young. Mind you, we've been together for over 9 years at this point. Told me I was forcing my boyfriend to marry me, that I guilt tripped him into it, and a vast slew of other terrible things that brought me to tears. So, I confronted my so about all this, and he was upset about all the things his dad said too. So, I called it off. I cancelled everything, called everyone and told them that we were going to reschedule it to another date. It was really hard holding back the tears. I did this while he was still at work, and I was sitting in my studio crying over a glass of wine. When he got home I was still in the same spot. He came up to me and said something to the effect of, "Hey, I love you, fuck him. We are still getting married." He doesn't get a say in this. We ended up calling everyone back, except his father, and having the little ceremony on the original date. We've been married for just about 3 years now. So, I guess no one ever said no. I just cancelled the whole thing and told his dad that I wouldn't marry his son. He can go fuck himself, by the way. TLDR. So and I planned a cheap wedding after 9 years together. His dad flips out on us. So is upset and says he doesn't know what to do. I call off the wedding. So says fuck him. We get married anyways. Been married 3 years. My mom actually proposed to my dad not once, not twice, but 3 times. All 3 times my dad rejected her because they had not lived together long enough in his opinion, dating for 3 years, living together for 2, and because he felt he wasn't ready for marriage. After attempt number 3, my mother vowed she was absolutely going to wait until my father had proposed 3 times until she accepted. My mother is extremely stubborn. I have never experienced her either budging an inch or compromising once she has her mind set on something in the 25 years I have been alive. What I do know is that once my father proposed, her reply was, "Yeah, whatever, I'll marry you. Just get on your damn feet. You can't kneel here." Now for context, at the time he proposed, they had now been living together for around 4.5 years. He felt ready for a marriage. He had also recently broken both his feet in an accident and was jumping around on crutches. Now my dad, being the blithering moron he is, had decided the romantic setting for a proposal the recipient had publicly stated would be rejected was going to be one of his rehabilitation walks. It was rainy, it was dark, it was cold, and he managed to kneel in a pretty big puddle. How he even managed to kneel with 2 broken feet is beyond me. He proposed. And my mom replied in the fashion previously stated. The end. Strange proposal story. I worked as a exotic dancer. Yes, I know, crazy. I never would date men I met at the club, but I tried dating men I met at other bars. So I met this man Mason, decided to go on a couple dates. Within a week's time he broke into my house, stole my car keys at the bar, so I would need a ride from him. Woke up in the morning to them on top of my purse. I decided to end any conversation with him. Later that night at the club he comes in, buys me off the floor for an hour's VIP, gets a free bottle of champagne. My boss tells me I can't deny the dance and I have to go into the room for at least 30 minutes. So I reluctantly go into the room, grab the bottle, and start chugging it, as he tells me the last 5 days have been the best days of his life, and asks me to marry him. I flip out knowing that he was the one who broke into my house and taking my car keys. He denied it at first, then came clean about it. Still begs me to marry him in the VIP room until my 30 minutes were up and I walked out. My boss tells me his real name is Jason, not Mason. This man then continued to call my phone with no answer, started to block his number. One of my other dancers answers, and he said he was a customer from earlier that I gave my number to, and I, knowing that I don't do that, told him I was calling the cops. I ended up needing a restraining order from him. He would send me flowers and gifts. I ended up having to sell my house and move to a different town, stop dancing, and got a 8-to-5 job because of him. After that I didn't date anyone for years. Now I'm happily married to a man I met at a friend's house. We are celebrating our first anniversary this Wednesday. Not a denial, but it definitely sent the sheets up me. I planned a trip to Paris from the UK with a very specific plan, to ask my girlfriend of 6 years to marry me at the same moment that the Eiffel Tower sparkles on the hour after sunset. We had a plan to walk around Paris for the day, head back to the hotel in the late afternoon, and then go back out and be at the Eiffel Tower around 30 minutes before the hour. I spent the whole day carrying around a small shoulder bag so it wouldn't look weird when I used it to conceal the ring later that evening. We got back to the hotel and were both knackered. My girlfriend said, "Wake me up 30 minutes before we need to go back out." "Okay, no problems," I said. 0.15 minutes after we were supposed to leave, I woke up from an unplanned nap. Now I'm panicking. I didn't want the plan to not work out. After much flustering and lots of "what's the rush, babe, I don't mind if we don't see the Eiffel Tower sparkle, isn't our dinner reservation not for us?" We finally got to the desired location with time to spare. Now I'm as nervous as a kid on their first day of high school. We find somewhere nice to sit somewhere not in the hundreds of people that I wasn't expecting to be there. My heart's racing faster and faster and faster. Am I sitting weird? God, I can't believe I'm about to do this. I'm definitely sitting weirdly. And then all of a sudden she looks at me and says, "What's wrong? You're acting weird. Why are you sat like that? What's in your bag?" "I'm great." "No, I'm not." "Am I?" Nothing," I replied. She then came out with a statement that I will never ever forget. After all this planning, this longest day, the panicking, the nerves, she comes out with, "You're not gonna ask me to marry you, are you? 'Cause I'll say no." Vertical bar. What? No, don't be stupid. Moments later, as the Eiffel Tower began sparking and she's taking a million photos, I get her to sit down next me in the same stupid position I was sat in and asked her if she'd do me the pleasure of being my wife. Thankfully she did in fact say yes, and 4 years later we've recently celebrated a year of marriage and our 10-year anniversary will be in December. She's the star-crossed love of my life. A long time ago, a group of us high schoolers decided to go to a late night movie. Only me and this other girl showed up. The other 5 to 6 people bailed at the last minute. So we watched the movie together. I had no romantic feelings for this girl, but enjoyed her company. So we went on a couple more movies as friends. She has asthma. One day during a movie, she looked like she had an asthma attack. So we left the movie and all I could think of was to get her to a hospital. But it turned out she was just nervous because she wanted us to be exclusive and was afraid I wouldn't. I hadn't thought about it before but said okay. After a couple of months of dating, I knew I'd marry her someday. I had grown to love who she really was. The problem was that her parents were divorced and she swore she'd never marry. 6 months later, she moved to California for college. I went to the military. We saw each other about twice a year for 4 years. We almost broke up a couple of times, but we miraculously went to Boston for grad school. We took the first 2 years slow. From not seeing each other at all to being in the same city, not living together, was still a big change. Eventually we moved in together. Close to graduation, 5 years PhD, she had a big change of heart. All of a sudden, she wanted to get married. I said it was all too sudden and a big change from what she'd been saying all those 10 years. I said I wasn't ready. Unknown to her, I was already putting the wheels in motion. I had already ordered a ring. I was planning to propose to her at the 4th of July fireworks at the Charles River. I couldn't stray from the plan. On the morning of the 4th of July, she brought up marriage again. I was so excited and wanted to tell her that I wanted to marry her, but I told her that I really couldn't commit. She was in tears the whole day. She didn't want to go to the fireworks. But somehow I managed to convince her to go. She didn't want to mingle with the crowd, so we went to her office that overlooked the Charles River and fireworks. When it started, I took out the ring. She was so shocked. And then she started slapping me for making her go through an awful day. Happily married with 2 kids. I still remember it like yesterday. Thanks for reading. I haven't been refused. I have refused. My boyfriend and I, we met little over 3 years ago. He was my best friend, and as my relationship then started to crumble, first year in university and all, high school sweetheart, he was there to get me through it all. We know everything about each other, we like the same music, have the same sense of humor, we played chess on Tuesday afternoons in the local cafe. After a devastating amount of thinking and reconsidering, I broke up with my boyfriend and celebrated my newly found freedom with the close friends I had made. I also got a cat. Her name is Monty, and she is a total ass. But I digress. My landlord at the time was being a piece of shit. I was not allowed access to hot water. He tried to poison my cat. He gave permission for me to keep it though, and was passive aggressive on the whole. Me and my best friend decide to look for an apartment together. Surely we could find something together as friends. But then we had a party and we ended up sleeping together. Right before moving in together, we spent an entire weekend eating snacks and watching anime and getting naked, so it was a happy weekend. But then the housing question came up. We decided to just go for it. Fresh into our newly established fuck buddyship / relationship thing, we moved into our own apartment with cat, but with separate bedrooms in case something went wrong between us. So far, that bedroom has been used once. Before an important exam. It sucked. So he has claimed in our 2 years together that he knows what he wants. I'm tempted to say so too, but I'm 21 years old. He is 30 now, which you honestly wouldn't be able to tell. Not that it matters, so I understand he would want to. We are happy, we communicate, we get through tough times like champs. We are everyone's OTP for some reason. But I'm 21, still foolishly in love, and not even halfway into my studies. I feel the need to become my own person first and get a career going before I give in. Therefore, I've said no about 8 times now. Besides, I'd look awfully out of place in a wedding dress. Alright, story time. Gonna be long, I've been itching to type this out somewhere, and since you asked, here it is. My ex and I had been dating for around 7 years before I decided to pop the question. Nothing romantic, just a rooftop thing timed to the sunset. I got down in one knee and asked. The response was less than stellar, more on the line of UHH, can I think about this? Oh, shit, red flag, but maybe she's not ready. So, stupid me being so in love at this point, decided to wait it out. We had a lengthy talk about our future, and we decided that we should take it a bit slower leading up to it. Here's where it gets messy. About a month later, I get blindsided with a break, and she tells me that she needs time alone to think and to be herself and experience life. I thought, what the fuck, what happened to finding a nice place together, adopting a pup, and kids' names? So here I am, devastated at the though of losing everything. About a month goes by, and I finally crack, so I messaged her. Conversation flows well, we both miss each other, and we decide to go meet up for dinner. Everything goes well, laughter and joy all around. She invites me back to her place to hang out and continue our night. So we started talking, and I asked what she was up to for the bit of time that we were apart. She said she's just been missing me and hang out with some new friends. I inquire a bit more about it and turns out she's just been hanging out with some dude that she met prior to our break. I navigate through her words and feints, then finally asked what was going on. Turns out she's been using him as a factoid and experiencing life apparently. So, you're telling me that you really wanted to just be technical about this relationship and wanted a bit of that greener grass before settling? Okay, it gets worse. Here I am, hopelessly in love. I try everything I can to win her back. Spending the following months doing sweet nothings, being romantic, setting up surprises. She loves every bit of it, and she's eating it all up. All the while, she's faking this dude and telling me that she can't wait to spend the rest of her life with me because she loves me. This goes on for, I'm going to recall 3 months. I finally couldn't take it, and I backed off a bit. I stopped doing shit for her, and I focused on rebuilding. She then notices that she might be losing me and starts being super nice to me now. Cooking meals for me, getting small gifts, hanging out only with me, and trying to reassure that fuckboy there isn't important. Unfortunately, I buy into it. It gets worse from here. So now we are T+5 months since the break happened, and I'm starting to regain some independence and confidence. I started dating again and doing things away from her. She starts to notice and then starts flipping out on me. First it was the guilt trip, then it was the emotional things like crying and self-pity. I tell her that if there's no real commitment then I'm moving on. We start to talk a bit more seriously about our future again, and I start to buy into it again. I give it another go, but all the while, I told her that until she commits, I'm going to continue meeting people and going on dates. She takes it badly, and we don't see each other for a bit. To be honest, to this point, I'm in such emotional shambles that anything I did was just a distraction from the awful feelings I harbored. So here we are, probably 7 months out now. I lost a lot of trust with her, and also some friends. She had a tendency to cling to my friends and use them as her own fallback cushion, getting emotional support every way she could. I started to call some friends out on it and told them that it wasn't cool. It made me paranoid and I didn't like it. And then I get this for a response. Dude, you think something's going on with her and me? You got it all wrong. She was actually sleeping with so and so. Well, Safe to say that I've basically hit the lowest point. I was a reek, and I was done. I worked up the courage to call my ex and give her a piece of my mind. She then breaks down and says that she didn't mean any of it and she still loves me and wants to spend her life with me. Oh, not this again. So I moved on from there. I started seriously dating this new girl now and everything goes well. Until ex finds out, then straight out starts harassing me pretty much every day from there on for around a year. It was her way of telling me that she's fighting for me and for us. That there's still hope and she wants that life with me again. Sending me gifts, letters, texts, and etc. This was straight up crazy. So, maybe T plus 1.5 years, everything settles. I stop getting anything, and I'm able to recover from all of this. But sad to say, I'm still a bit ruined at this point. She played her emotional games and no one came out the winner. So in case she reads this and pieces everything together and knows that this is her, I tell you, thanks for taking away nearly 2 years of my life and making every day miserable. Your selfish actions caused a whole lot of hurt for a lot of people. I hope you spend the rest of your life thinking about how good it could have been and that you'll never quite get that happiness that you were hoping to get. Sorry for the long rant, but it was just something I was holding on to for too long. To pull everyone's spirits up after this, got into the best shape of my life, met a hottie, she said yes, and got a solid career now. TLDR, longtime girlfriend goes on a break with me and bangs her friend, then plays games with me, bangs a friend of mine, and harass me for around a year after it. This is extremely long, but cathartic. Old throwaway account for this, even though it will probably be buried. I wasn't denied a proposal, I was tipped off that my ex likely posted about me here, so I'm going to write about the impending proposal as the wake-up call I needed to escape. Backstory, my first adult relationship, I was 18, he was 40, was with a minor celebrity who was very abusive. His violence put me in the hospital thrice, and he convinced me it was my fault every time but the last, which is why I enrolled at a university 500 miles away in secret and fled. This likely accounts for how I missed a lot of warning signs in my subsequent relationship despite tons of therapy over the 3 years between. I met my boyfriend on OkCupid during my senior year of college. He was a few years older than me, but had established himself in a government job with a high security clearance and secret tasks in foreign countries, like James Bond. A classmate and close friend of mine once told him he hoped a displaced civilian would light him on fire. He doted on me with grand romantic gestures. The only problem was a crazy ex who was always calling/texting, but we both had crazy exes, right? I graduate. We plan to move to a large metropolitan city 3 hours away where I have gotten an excellent job that starts in fall. He lives in a quaint town that is pretty, but doesn't have much going on outside of tourism. He delays moving by a month, then 2, and then confesses that he's made a down payment on a house in this town because he sees her here. Smitten, I give up my excellent job and start looking for work, but jobs are scarce. Things get weird. He starts waking me up in the middle of the night because he is convinced that foreign governments have sent assassins. He, 6 feet 3 inches, 300 pounds, hides in a closet while he sends me, 5 feet 2 inches, 110 pounds, around his huge house terrified and carrying a gun that I don't know how to use because they won't do anything to you. They don't want you. After months of struggling to find work, I want to apply for unemployment, but I'm not allowed to because it would taint his political aspirations. Also, despite earning 6 figures, he wants me to pay half of the monthly house payments. I offered to pay rent from the start, but I could have rented a luxury apartment for the amount he wanted. He knows I have savings from my uni job and demands I give him half, 30% of rent for the year, and do all housework/cooking. Meanwhile, he's bought a brand new BMW, but he starts demanding that I drive him 45 minutes to work because his ankle is sore for the duration of our 2.5-year relationship, but he drives when I'm not around. He constantly criticizes my car/how I drive and never chips in for gas. I get a job at a high-end boutique, but now I have to pay for all of the groceries since my savings/housework/cooking/chauffeuring aren't enough. Around this time he asks me to get his mom's phone number off his phone and the call log reveals many hours long conversations with his ex. She's not well, he tells me. She's suicidal. How can I be so heartless? He has his colleagues over, and they laugh when I say something about the secrecy of his job. One tells me he has the lowest security clearance possible. He's an it guy. Still good, not James Bond. Whenever he makes me search the house at night, I have a snack and watch Netflix, so he has to hide longer. Then I managed to get an interview for a job in town in my field, but my boyfriend is skeptical. Who is going to drive him to work? Who is going to clean the house? My manager at the retail job loans me a beautiful silk dress for my interview. I look fantastic. Even though it's not a day where he usually goes to the office, he asks me to drive him. He is drinking a liter of Mountain Dew at 8 AM, and when he gets out of the car, he accidentally spills most of it on me. I try to clean up, but my hair is wet and my dress has a huge green stain. I call the interviewer and nobody answers, so I show up late, explain that there's been an accident, while trying to be professional and not cry, and ask if I could please reschedule. They say they'll call me. They don't. I tell the manager at my retail job a crazy person threw a drink at me. I pay $400 because the dress isn't returnable. I'm too ashamed to tell anyone. I'm supposed to be atoning for how dysfunctional I was as a teen by shacking up with my abusive musician boyfriend instead of going to college. It takes 3 months to decide to drive back to my hometown while he's on a business trip. 2 weeks later I get an offer for a job related to my desired field. Back in the tourist town. Because I didn't want my parents to see me as a fuck up, I told them the breakup was because I couldn't find a job. The next day my boyfriend's in my parents' kitchen, 6-hour drive, telling my sympathetic mom how much he loves me. He says he's in therapy and swears he'll never take me for granted again, and because of the job, I go back. He pulls out all the stops and things are good for a few months, but I make friends at work, and he feels threatened, and tries to keep me away from them. I'm killing it at my job. He says my boss asks me to lead PDs because she wants to get what she can out of me before she fires me. He starts hiding my keys, so I'm late for work. He removes my car's mirrors. The better things are going for me, the nastier he is. One day I'm putting away laundry, and I find the gold engagement ring in his sock drawer. I'm allergic to gold. I get a rash. He's seen it. We go out to dinner with his colleague and colleague's fiance the next day. I compliment the fiance's gold earrings and mention I'm allergic. Boyfriend barks no you aren't. I reiterate that I am, and he pounds the table with his fist, then carries on genially, oblivious to everyone's horrified silence. On the drive home, he says our wedding will be different from his colleagues. I tell him I don't want to marry him. He says yes you do and prattles on. The thought of spending my life like this chills me to my core. I apply for grad school in a city where I've always wanted to live on the other coast. Thanksgiving is that week, and I'm spending it with family. I told him weeks prior that he can't come and to make other plans. He doesn't. He calls all day, getting progressively drunker and crying about suicide. The last messages were wordless drunken wailing. I call 911. He gets a 5150. After I move all of my stuff into my new place, I pick him up. He starts screaming about how I faked up and I owe him apologies. He's not getting the reaction he wants. I'm all out of facts and turn up the radio. He yanks my parking brake up in the middle of a busy highway and flees. He leaves sputtering voicemails when I don't deign to drive him home. A few days later, I get a call from his mom because he attempted suicide. His mom is nice, but neurotic and aware her son is an asshole. When I first met her, she patted my hand and said sweetie, you don't have to settle. She's almost 80, he's adopted, and I help her clean up the blood all over his bedroom/bathroom. He tried to slit his wrist in a way that would garner attention, but not kill him. Google search was open on his computer, nicked a major artery, passed out, and broke his arm by falling on it, yet somehow called 911. His mom takes care of some stuff in town. She flew over without packing. He's giving me the whole wheel to counseling. You're my everything. His phone is buzzing inside his bag and it's annoying, so I pick it up, and it's his ex with 40 missed calls and text previews that say things like, can I come back? and checkout is at 2. I need to know. I close out of the texts to see a very active OkCupid inbox. I head for the door. He gets out of bed to call me a cruel, useless hoe and faciplance, pantsless, which is how I leave him. Over the next 2 weeks, he started showing up at wherever I was out to glare at me from across the room. He was a coward. I was surrounded by friends, sometimes with a really sad-eyed woman. He was still calling/texting me obsessively. I had a track phone and couldn't block him, oscillating between begging me to come back/saying was going to die alone because of me. 2 weeks post breakup, after a night of being bombarded with messages of the dying alone variety, there was a text that said something like "I'm happier than you'll ever be." I disregarded it until a colleague who knew he was nuts called to ask how I was coping. He had gotten engaged to the ex/the sad-eyed woman that morning. He had been seeing his crazy ex, who lived 3 hours away, the whole time we had been together, framing me as unstable and unable to cope with life if he ever left me. She would drive to him and back in a single day, 6 hours of driving, and quit her job to go to him immediately after the 5150. She had been the one to call 911 after his accident, after which he told her to wait in town for him, which makes her the way less crazy person in their relationship. Their engagement lasted maybe 2 months and I feel badly for her. My laptop went on the fritz about a month after the breakup. The techs found a bunch of surveillance software on it, which explains the stalking. My ex was fired not long after for doing this kind of shady shit/being unstable. I believe he's living on disability and renting out every room in his house. It's been 6 years, and 3 weeks ago, I married a wonderful man who shares my goals and makes feel so loved. Remember the guy way at the beginning who told my ex that he should be lit on fire? You probably don't, because this is so long, but he's my husband now. We've known each other for 12 years, but started dating during my 2nd year of grad school. We are unbelievably happy. TLDR, my ex posted a sob story here. I posted the other side of that sob story. Suck it, ex. Let me tell you about the time I proposed without knowing it. My ex and I were almost at the 2-year mark of dating. We were both 19 and dumb. She was in love. I was just in the moment still. Every other week we would always go out to eat and shop/people watch. This one particular date night she asks me what I'm getting her for our 2nd anniversary. I said, oh, I don't know, let's check out what they have at the mall jewelry shop. After looking for a few minutes she has her eyes set on a $400 necklace. For 19-year-old me, that was a lot of money. So I try to make her happy with something more in my price range. That's when I see the $180 diamond ring. Her birthstone is diamond and it's less than half. She lines love it, I thought. When I pointed it out she got really giddy, said oh my god I love it, and the jeweler had a small happy smile on her face. Got the X sized up, and we picked the ring up 2 days before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is held at my dad's house. My dad's family, my stepmom's family, all told a little over 40 people. I bring the girlfriend with me, swearing her ring. It still hadn't registered what I had bought her, so in we go. I get comfortable on the couch watching the Thanksgiving Lions game. She's talking to one of my cousins, playing with it on her finger. Every now and then I'd hear someone say congratulations. I thought they were telling my cousin that because he and his new wife were expecting, so still no big deal. Then my stepmom calls me over. She said it was rude of me not to tell her or my father that I was engaged before telling others. What? You and girlfriend are getting married? Why didn't you tell us first? What the hell are you talking about? You bought girlfriend an engagement ring. No, that's a 2-year anniversary gift. Welsh's telling everyone it's an engagement ring. AWW So stupid. 19-year-old me calls girlfriend over to the other room. I tell her I need the ring back. Why? Because we are not getting married. We aren't? Not anytime soon. That's when she took the ring off, threw it at me, screamed that I'm a faking asshole, and ran out the door. My whole family heard it, all of it. I took off after her. She told me to leave her alone. I tried to explain what I did. She called me a faking idiot. I lost it. I said I never asked the faking question. We never even brought up marriage in conversation before. I was just trying to save some money. She didn't like hearing that. We were screaming outside for a bit. My brother came to try and calm us down, but it was beyond the point of no return. We were over. I went back inside. Once my girlfriend's sister came and picked her up. It was really awkward, everyone kept glancing at me and avoiding me. My dad came over with my uncle, they had a bottle of wild turkey and some solo cups. After a few shots and more family joining in the drinking, I told them how this came about. Everyone started laughing. I didn't try to fix things with her after that. Like I said, we both said some things that neither one of us should have said. I was proposed to at around age 16 over 17. I met a guy online when it was totally safe to do so and chatted to him for around 3 to 6 months. It wasn't a relationship by any means. Well, I didn't think so. I don't remember how old he was, but at a guess at least 25. I don't remember telling him what town I lived in, but I must have mentioned it. He called me on my work phone. At the time I worked at a supermarket and asked if I wanted anything for lunch. I laughed it off because he lived 3 hours away. 3 hours later, this guy, who believe me looked nothing, and I mean nothing like his one picture he sent me, was standing in front of me with a bunch of roses. I thought he had mistaken me. Stupidly enough, I took a break from work and we went for a drive. After stopping the car and shooting up with morphine next to me, holy shit, I was so young I didn't even know what any of that meant. He handed me a key and said he'd rented a house for us to live in, and then handed me a bank card linked to his account for me to use. Last but not least, he handed me a ring engraved with something like "Our love will never die" or something. I freaked out and said I'd need to think about it as I was scared for my life. I didn't really think much of it, but got him to drop me home. He then knew where I lived, dummy. I ended up messaging him and suggesting we should just be friends, and I wasn't ready. He then proceeded to put a hex, yes you read right, a hex, on me. He wanted me to be miserable for all eternity. He then started flying. He had his pilot's license over my house. He'd send me messages like, "Oh, your mum is home from work today," or "Your dog is off the chain," or shit like that. It gradually reduced, and probably a year later he messaged me to let me know he'd removed the hex. Don't meet people online when you're young and naive. Edit, TLDR, I met a guy online. He proposed whilst shooting up with morphine. I said no. He put a hex on me. He flew over my house and stalked me for a while. He then took the hex off. Edit 2, I'm now 29 years old. For a term of reference, how long ago this was. I'm also happily married. My ex-boyfriend and we're a long distance thing. I've done that song and dance many times before. We were friends online for a while, and he supported me through my relationship problems with my ex-girlfriend before him. After about 4 months I went up all the way across the country to visit him and his family. Though I do regret a lot of it, the only fun I had was hanging out with his mom and getting stoned with his younger brother and play video games, who for some reason he was eerily jealous. He was sweet and loving, but that was all. We hooked up after a welcoming party he threw for me, even though I told him I don't plan on having sex my first night there, and no matter what I say, while drunk, to ignore me and let me sleep. A few days later, he looks over at me and said, "I'm marrying you on our year anniversary." I laughed because he forgot my last relationship ended on our anniversary. No, why not? Because that's not long enough for me. That was a lie. I was scared to tell him I didn't trust him anymore after the party and his repeated negativity towards the people I cared about, my personal views on the world, the way he laughed at my insecurities. A month later I'm back at home on the phone with him after an argument. "I wanted to marry you. Fuck you," and I told him to never speak to me again. I may have been harsh, but I take marriage seriously. I take relationships seriously. I expected him to be respectful and love me. That's all I asked for. I didn't want someone to spoil me, and I wasn't going to give up my dreams to stay in a tiny town with no future for me. Now 3 years later I'm in love with my best friend and roommate from university, living with her, and we are planning on getting married when our life gets settled and stable enough. All in all, the lesson here is make sure you actually like the person you're in love with, and make sure you'll be able to survive and live comfortable before even thinking of proposing. It'll save you the nightmare and heartbreak. It also doesn't hurt to talk about it as opposed to just randomly popping the question without warning. So this is sorta from both sides of the coin, and sorry it's going to be long. We dated on and off for somewhere between 5 and 6 years. We were young and dumb when we met in college. The early stages of our relationship suited both of us well. We just wanted to be two unlabeled people who stayed faithful to each other and did couple things without having to define ourselves. We partied and drank a lot. After the first few months we just mutually drifted and dissolved back into friendship. I was trying to focus more on school and my job. He was more concerned about how many shots he could do before he blacked out. He was rooming with my best friend at the time, and I found out from her that he'd started dating one of our classmates. I really hated that girl because she was notorious for cheating on her men. Of course, about a month later he came back crying to me that she had cheated on him. He was heartbroken and he missed me. I stupidly took him back. This love triangle from hell goes on for over 2 years when she tells him she's pregnant and it might be his. At the time he and I were together and had been for a week or two. She was about 2 months along by then and I wasn't sure what to do, but I stuck by his side through the pregnancy. We sat down after and discussed if he planned to go back to her to try to make things work since the paternity test showed the baby was his. He wasn't sure but felt like he should. I told him I felt like it was time for us all to grow up and for him to learn to define relationships rather than just faking around. He proposed to her. They set a date and I stepped out of the picture for about a year. That's when the shit hit the fan. He called me and asked if we could talk. He brought his kid. It was super weird. He kept telling the kid to call me mommy. I got angry with him and that's when he told me she left him for someone else and was pregnant with the other guy's kid. I stupidly took him back again. Yeah, I'm a faking idiot, or rather I was. I told him this time around I wanted him to define our relationship. I was tired of just being his friend or his date, but never his girlfriend. If he could call her his girlfriend, it made no sense that he couldn't do the same for me after all that time. Somewhere between 6 months and a year goes by. I'd spend every weekend at the house he owned, but we still never labeled our relationship. I finally call him out on it. He showed up at my place the next day, and while I'm cooking shouts from the couch, "Hey, you wanna marry me?" I responded with, "What did you just say?" He shrugged and was all nonchalant, like, "You want a label? Let's just faking get married or something." I don't know. I'm just trying to find a compromise, so you'll stop asking. Husband and wife, that's a label. I suddenly had the realization that I was just settling for him. I could never see myself with someone who didn't seem mature enough to handle life. He was still a party boy and was excited when his child support payments were lowered so he could buy a motorcycle. I actually bursted into uncontrollable laughter. You know, the kind that brings tears to your eyes? I told him he should probably go and pretend he never asked me such a ridiculous question, because it actually hurt to think about how much of my life I had wasted with him. We crossed paths a few times after that. He would still try to get me to come to his house on the weekends. A few years later I cut all ties with him when I walked into work and saw a picture on a coworker's desk of her and her husband in front of his house holding a sold sign. I said, "Oh, did you guys just buy that? I actually know the previous owner." She looked at me oddly and said, "No, that's our old place. It's just a great picture of us from when we first moved here. We lived there a few years ago with some roommates, one of whom was a total douchebag." I gave her my ex's name, and she was like, "Holy shit. Were you one of the girls he told he owned the house? I'm so sorry." Turns out he'd of course been cheating on me the whole time. I should have known better. I didn't even waste the energy to confront him. I just blocked his number and every source of social media and moved on with my life, finally feeling free. TLDR, my ex refused to define our relationship. He got another girl pregnant. He proposed to me. I laughed in his face and found out he'd been lying to me for many years. We no longer talk. Dated a gal in college for 3 years. She really wanted a ring on year 2, but I put it off and ultimately bought her a practical gift, or so I thought. Things were good for the most part. I lived in her parents' basement with her and her family. We had separate rooms and never once had sex. Not for a lack of trying. We did plenty of other stuff. She stuck to her guns on waiting till her wedding day, and I had a pretty good thing with the free rent/meals. Her parents even started doing my laundry. They loved me. I would clean, do dishes, cook, mow the yard, anything I could to show them how much I appreciated them letting me move in. Year 3 rolls around, and I buy a $2,500 ring. I ask the parents for permission and they are ecstatic. It's not like I didn't have money. I was no bum. I worked full-time in retail and part-time as a morning producer of our local television station. Plus I was taking 9 college credits. Things were going good. I proposed in Minneapolis. Not really a great planned out proposal. On a weekend trip we took up there from Iowa. She said maybe. I was taken back. Maybe? It rocked me to my core. It was a 3-hour drive back home. To her parents' house no less, and I got a maybe. It was one of the worst car rides home ever. The next day I woke up and immediately threw up. She didn't talk to me at all that night we got home. Keep in mind home for both of us is her parents' house. I put the ring in a safe and called in sick to both jobs. Skipped all college classes and just roamed for a day. Emotionally destroyed. A week goes by. She's pretending nothing happened. I propose again. Maybe. At this point I officially hit fuck it. I stopped doing stuff around the house. Stopped being pleasant at all. My friends ask me to go out and blow off some steam, and we do. Spend nearly $1,000 over the next 7 days drinking, gambling, lots and lots of strippers. I attempt to take the ring back, and I'm blocked with in-store credit only. Holy fuck. Now what? Luckily, my parents came to my rescue as I wanted this ring just gone. They took the in-store credit and paid me cash. I lived with her and her parents for 2 more months. Her parents didn't find out what happened until after 2 weeks of me being an emotional wreck. To this day, she is still single, never married. Her parents have contacted me and said she made the biggest mistake of her life. I have 3 kids, great wife, job paying $150k plus per year, faking maybe. I hope she trolls my Facebook and cries herself to sleep often. Well, I can't say that I've ever proposed to anyone, but I can answer from a different perspective. Kinda. I used to go to Bayou, and if you know anything about the culture there, it's not unusual to consider marriage after a few months, even less in some cases, of dating. I was dating a guy that I was honestly not that interested in and didn't spend a lot of time with. I barely held this guy's hand and it just really wasn't there for me. After a short time of dating, which really consisted of tolerating listening to him once in a while, ignoring 80% of his texts and calls, watching 1 or 2 movies I thought were dumb, and going to in and out burger occasionally, every conversation starts turning into one about marriage and family. Within a short period of time it worsened, and he started to see me as a real companion and friend, but I was honestly pretty numb and absent from it all. We were dating, but it felt like spending a lot of time with an acquaintance. To be honest, that's what every relationship I'd had felt like. He wasn't a bad guy, and I wasn't a bad person either, but I knew we had nothing in common, and we both deserved different things that would make us happier. I broke up with him. Not too long later I discover that he had serious intentions of marrying me, and according to someone else they saw him glancing at rings at the sales in the mall. Later on in a very brief conversation this was confirmed, so I'm glad I stopped things before anyone was too hurt. We never spoke again really, but I saw he married a girl I once knew, and they couldn't be happier. Knowing them both, they're perfect for each other, and in a weird way it makes me really happy they're together. Moral of the story, sometimes things end for the better. As for me, after seeing my parents' empty marriage fail at a young age, and not really believing love was real, I met a boy. And this boy took all of my skepticism, turned it upside down, and forced me to forget everything I thought I knew about caring about someone, and what being happy really meant. He's adorable, funny, sexy, and occasionally an asshole, but there's no one on the planet that I'd rather be with after a long day. All of the time we spent talking, and I still can't get enough of him. No matter where life takes us, I'm just happy he's in my life. He's my best friend. Everything is worth it because of him. Then I got cancer. But we can't win 'em all now, can we? Edit. Grammar. Didn't get to propose, but was planning on it, so here's a story. Had been planning the entire wedding for months, planned on getting married after she graduated from undergrad in May 2017. We had a guest list, budget $21,000, bridesmaids, groomsmen, pretty much everything planned out. All there was left to do was for me to ask her parents for permission, then propose, and then get married. The same month we put a deposit on a wedding reception venue with a massive deal. I was supposed to meet with her parents for dinner and ask them. Dinner was planned out for a Thursday. I spoke with parents on the Tuesday beforehand and was joking around with them about their daughter. Real casual conversation that Thursday. I get a text from her dad, "You might want to talk to insert name before we go to dinner tonight." I didn't even reply back. I called her. She was away with her friend and their family, and she broke up with me over the phone. Her dad was really great about it, told me he knows I never did anything wrong, and told me things will be okay. Honestly dodged a bullet though. I was supposed to go to Chicago with her once she got back from her trip. While in Chicago I was going to go get the ring that I had reserved for pickup and purchase. Planned on proposing at the Cubs game we were going to attend. Since she broke up with me, I was able to save myself $3,000 for the ring, sold the tickets to the game, $200 profit, and was able to fund myself to move to Chicago for graduate school from everything I had saved for the wedding. Only thing I'm still bitter over is the fact that her mom gave away some of my clothing that will never be produced again. Former college athlete, so that stuff was strictly for us, and my favorite book that I loaned. Took some time to get over it, but things couldn't have been better since. 3 years ago, my then boyfriend and I were planning a trip to Chicago. We had been dating for about 4 years and had been living together for most of that time. We had a house together and were settling in. We had discussed marriage in the past and knew that it was something that we wanted to do eventually. While I was looking for things for us to do on our trip, I thought it would be fun to get married while we were there. Neither of us wanted a big wedding, and I felt that the timing was right. I looked into requirements and places and made a list. I went to talk to him one night about the trip and I said I thought it might be fun to get married while we're there. I did not get the reaction I expected. He was not even a little hesitant about it. He flipped out on me. He was obviously upset and said that I was always up his ass and that he didn't think he could give me the attention that I wanted. Obviously, I was too shaken up to talk about it anymore and cried all night. I joined a gym the next day and found other things to do besides be at home with him. So much work, school, and the gym took care of it pretty well. Things eventually blew over, but we didn't talk about it anymore. Less than a year later, we were engaged. This time, it was his idea. It wasn't so much a proposal, but just him saying, "We should get married." I agreed, but in the back of my mind, I wondered what it was that changed his mind. I had suffered 2 unexpected losses in my family during that year, and he was there for me. I wondered if it had to do with that. Maybe he realized he wanted to always be there for me. It's something that I probably should have asked before we got married, but I was so afraid to bring it up. I was afraid he would second guess everything and decide not to marry me. We have now been married for 2 years and I'm still wondering. 54. I know this will probably get swallowed by previous stories, but what the hell? I dated a girl for a year and 3 months and decided that it was probably time to throw my life out the window. So I did exactly that, or at least I tried to. She came over on Saturday night to my house for a late night meal after work and I pulled all the stops out. The trail of rose petals, candles, romantic music, little notes, all that jazz. When she finally got to the end of the trail I was there on an e-ring in hand with a bouquet of roses. She said yes and this is where it all started to go downhill. I was in the final stretch of my first semester as a sophomore in college trying so desperately to hold on to my 4.0 GPA. The following Friday I check Snapchat just to see what my friends are up to, and I look at my fiancée story and she posted a pic of some moving boxes and says I hate moving. So I call her and ask what was going on. I figured that she was surprising me and actually moving in with me finally. This was not the case. She said that she had met someone else and she was moving in with him. Well, this crushed me and rendered me incapable of doing anything. Did I mention this was the day before my first final? Yeah, what a beach. So I failed all my finals that week, followed promptly by being kicked out of college the next week, and to top it all off, I had a heart attack the next. I'm now happily married to the love of my life, and couldn't be happier with a kid on the way. TLDR, proposed. She said yes, moved in with another guy the next week. This caused me to fail my finals in college. got kicked out of said college, and had a heart attack. Edit. Formatting. I spent 3 years in love with my best friend, and while we weren't lovers, we talked about marriage a lot. Like almost every scenario of our future ended with us together. We picked the names for our kids and fought over them a dozen times. She was working through some stuff, and I was trying to give her space. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but knew in my heart we'd be together one day. She always talked about wanting an elaborate proposal in Paris that would take months to plan and either a lot of very kind people or thousands of dollars. I decided that if she really loved me the way I loved her, none of that would matter. So just before I was heading overseas for a few weeks for work, I proposed to her with a cubic zirconia ring I had lying around from a photo shoot in the back alley behind her apartment. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She didn't say anything. She just put the ring on, asked where I got it, and if I was serious. I told her it wasn't real, but it was all I had right now, and that I was very serious. I got on the plane without getting her answer, but I was nervously excited that she was wearing the ring. We talked the first few days when I was in the city. She said she was wearing the ring every day, and she had told her parents who both approved of the match. The next week or so I was pretty far off in the wilderness, so we didn't speak before I got on a plane headed for home. When I got back, she wasn't there to greet me at the airport. I stopped by her apartment, but there was no answer when I knocked. No replies to my texts. It went on for days. Then weeks. Our mutual friends had no idea where she went. I tracked down her landlord, and he said she'd moved away, back home to the East Coast. I caught the first plane I could to Halifax. Found her parents' number in the phone book, drove 120 kilometers to their small town. I knocked on the door of her house, and she was there, standing in the open doorway. The first thing I did was look down at her hand and saw that she wasn't wearing the ring. At that point, it shouldn't have been a surprise. I didn't say anything. I was hurt and in pain, and I had my answer. I looked up from the ring and our eyes met. She knew what I was thinking. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath and said, "I pawned it for $3.30 for a bus back home, and Op should really have used a serious tag." I was 18, fresh out of high school, and went with him to visit his family at their home in Bermuda. I has been contemplating ways to end the relationship. He wasn't in favor of me pursuing a career. He was insanely needy, and he was so rude to people, waiters, strangers, cab drivers, you name it. I had tried my best to find his silver lining, even when he was rude to my parents and friends. But even young and innocent me knew something had to give. I went on the trip, mistake, with the intention of breaking it off at some point, not exactly knowing how. My favorite ring that my mother gave me after graduation went missing on the trip. I bawled my eyes out. His parents were driving me insane. He was being rude and dismissive. Tensions were high. I made up my mind to have the talk with him on the beach. The sun was setting. It was deathly silent, and I waited for him to join me with a pit in my stomach. He comes out of the house with 2 glasses of champagne. I took a sip, uncomfortable because he was staring daggers at me. I was convinced he knew I was about to break it off and wasn't going to take it well. Took one last gulp, cleared my throat and saw a ring in the bottom of the glass. He had stolen my ring off the nightstand. Watched as I sobbed and called my mom. In order to get the size, I wore it on the same finger, opposite hand, to get an engagement ring sized. I started crying, shaking my head, saying no, 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 no. He stammered it wasn't an engagement ring, it was just a present. And that was the end of that relationship. Rough. Was also proposed to when I was 21. It was also cringe inducing. That one was a no as well. Third time is the charm at 27. Waited for the love of my life. Glad I did. I followed my instincts. Found the right person. Dated for years. Lived together. And I've known since the beginning I would say yes. I'll tell you about the time I should have said no. At this point I had been dating this guy, we'll call him W, for a little over a year, and living with him for about 4 months. When we first got together there was lots of drinking and partying, but over time I realized I was drinking less, and he was drinking far more. Like had to drink 10 shitty beers before he could leave the house to drink. It was incredibly excessive and caused me to stop drinking altogether. When we did go out together, he usually ended up disappearing at some point. Anyway, one day he picked a fight with me and went to stay at his mom's for a few days. I was devastated, thought we had broken up, and ended up staying a few nights at my parents' house so I could grieve. He shows up at their door unexpectedly, I'm in the ugliest PJs, and says that he doesn't want me to be his girlfriend anymore. He wanted me to be his wife. Whiplash. I went from weird unto he wants to spend forever with me. Said yes without thinking. Now flash forward a couple of weeks. I ask for a long engagement due to my insecurities about the relationship and he says no. He wants to get married in 6 months and start having babies. It only took us 4 months to call off the engagement. A few more before we absolutely broke up for good. Within a month of our breakup I find out he's seeing someone he met in AA. The next month he's gotten her pregnant and already proposed. Ultimately, she lost the baby at 5 months and they dropped their romance. According to a mutual friend he has almost exclusively dated single mothers after that. Bullet dodged. Ugh. I met her when we were kids. She came from a wealthy family and I was poor at the time, helping do what I could, so me and my mom had food. She kinda just flew into my life the way a angel would I suppose. We spent little time together, and eventually I would be put in child services, adopted, with a new family, and we had no contact at all. Until early adulthood my job actually led us to each other again. After a good portion of time we ended up together, and were going down a path of love. Couple years had passed of us dating, and she tells me she is pregnant. I'm overjoyed, but I work out and feel him never home. Not long after coming under new management and seeing a chance to advance in my career, I had to make some bad decisions. Things she had found out about from my best friend Ben. On the night I was to ask her to help me in what some would call a hostile takeover, she shows up with my best friend Ben. Things got heated pretty quickly. I seem to remember her saying something to the effect of him going down a path she can't follow me, and Ben ended up in a pretty crazy fight. I ended up with both my legs amputated, along with my arm, with 5th degree burns all over my body. After that I basically became a shell of my former self. Got my promotion, and just met one of my kids for the first time. She had twins. I guess things could be worse. I'm excited because we are getting ready to open a nuclear reactor plant in a few weeks, and my son is actually working for our competitor. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. First proposal, after 2 years of dating and 6 months of living together. She said no, because the way I did it was not good enough. I made the move on our anniversary with a bottle of wine and a candlelit dinner, and thought it was the definition of who we were as a couple, only needing each other's company to make the moment right. But she didn't think the same way at that time. We stayed together for me to try again. Second proposal, Cedar Point, right after a rainstorm. No one around. It was quite the storm. People were mostly indoors, but not us, because we love playing in the rain. Just us under a tree. I had the ring and the confidence to ask again, and when I went to do it, she tried to get me back up before anyone could pay mind to what was going on. I would try again eventually. Third proposal, having private time in our room, and I blurted out just to see how she would react. She said yes and we celebrated, but the story is not done there, folks. We split up 2 months before the wedding date. She kicks me out, and I move on. There was no fault of one person that led to that event. It was the result of a build-up of stress and emotion of getting married that caused us to lose ourselves enough for her to pull the plug on the whole thing. After being separated for about a month, we realized what was important to one another and went on with being married. We have an awesome 2-year-old and another on the way. TLDR, I proposed. We were going to be married until we broke up, but now we are married with children. My mom has a good story. This happened in Korea. When she was in college like 25 years ago, she was quite popular among her peers and upper class males. She was smart and sharp-tongued, and perceived as quite independent around that time. She still is, but consider it was in 1970s. One of upper classmen proposed to her 3 times over 7 years. The guy was kinda shy, and mom told me that he was kind of person who likes to wait her around school gate or near her house to see her. These kinds of acts would now be considered as stalking, but back when everything was so much better, they were seen as romantic. The problem is, my mom isn't exactly into hot and passionate romance. She is rather cool and pragmatic like me, so although she didn't dislike him, but her opinion of him became less and less positive. My dad told me that some people, even though her a cold person, and she mellowed over the time point, she doesn't particularly like clingy people either. The first time the guy asked her out was her third year in college. He asked out for a date and gave her a diamond ring after a simple proposal. Of course, my mom was not interested in him, so she politely turned him down. He asked her out again second time a year later, and this time he did something really cringy. He took my mom to a fancy restaurant and read her this very tricky, goosebump inducing love poem to her. Most young ladies would have fallen for such silly yet genuine proposal, but he didn't realize my mom wasn't among most young ladies. She turned him down again 5 years later. She was working as hired hotel analyst, one of best hotel in Korea at that time. I don't know the ranks now, and was dating soon to be my father. A bit of digression, but she met my father through another one of her suitors. He and my dad were friends. She was dozing off in a downtown bus because she had little sleep the night before that day. My mom isn't still sure if it was a coincidence or not, but the guy who had proposed to her twice before got in the bus and stood next to her. My mom pretended to be asleep. That went for about an hour, and then he said, "I have been watching you for an hour, but you don't even pretend to notice I am here. This is my name card, and I hope to see you this evening." Left his business card and took off the bus. Then my mom opened her eyes and read the card which said vice president of this big company. She didn't go see him that evening, and instead yelled at my father then date for being half an hour late for date. TLDR. Guy proposes to my mom over 7 years, only to push her away in every attempt. Edit. I haven't thought of this until I read this thread, and now I realize how creeped my mom might have been. Oh. First girl I dated I proposed to after a year. Had a custom ring made from talks I had with her about getting married. When I proposed she said something like, "Yes, but not right now, and let's not tell anyone about this." Totally confused me and made me realize we were not on the same wavelength. Relationship slowly died after that. She kept the ring, but I didn't ask for it back either. Stupid. After we broke up she never talked to me again, even though I tried to at least maintain a friendship. I think she had some issues from a family issue growing up. I was not good either, being that it was my first long-term relationship and our communication was poor in both directions. I didn't know it at the time, but we were a poor match. I was too immature with relationships to know what a good one looks like. She started dating a guy about a month after we broke up. She ended up marrying that guy after about 6 months. Didn't have any of her family or his family there. They just did it on the sly, but didn't elope either. They ended up divorced a few years after that. I grew a beard for a year after we broke up. Met my future wife. We had known each other since we were kids, but being 3 years apart as kids is drastic compared to being in your 20s. I proposed to her by learning a few chords on guitar, writing a song, getting it recorded, and then having a local radio station play it. I told all her family and mine about it. Also did it on her birthday, so she wouldn't suspect the proposal until it was asked in the final verse of the song. We have been married for over 6 years, have 2 kids. Life is good. Dated this girl for about 9 years, 4 in college, 5 living together after. I worked a really terrible job, unhappily to put her through nursing school. We always had fun together, and I always considered her my best friend / partner in crime. We even adopted a dog together, Puggle, as a practice kid. 2012 we were in Costa Rica, and I had bought a ring and schlepped it all the way there. We were on a beach in the moonlight watching baby turtles attempt to hit the breakers and get carried to ocean to start their hopefully long life. When I popped the question on Miney, she said maybe. This was like day 3 of a week-long trip. The maybe turned into a no, but we lived together for around 4 months after that. Eventually she moved out, but we were still dating and would see each other a few times a week. Usually I would cook her dinner. I noticed one evening that she was blushing and laughed while staring at her phone and just ignoring me, which was pretty weird. She generally hated her phone and never laughed at anything. Realized she was texting her new interest that I can only assume she was seeing on the side. Needless to say, I kicked her out. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. 4 years later they are still dating and stupidly in love. I see them both all the time at mutual friends gatherings. It's pretty hard to deal with, but you know what? Fuck it. I got our dog and she's the best. Fun fact. I was a film major and hated it. Never worked in the industry. My shitty job was soul sucking. After we broke up I took a yearish sabbatical and focused on programming, something I like to do, and now do that full time in Boston and love my job. Still extremely bitter though, and never really connected to another girl emotionally. Not my story but my friend's. She's the diva type, and so absolutely everything has to be done a certain way, or she has a meltdown. She's above average in looks, but she's not amazing or anything. Her boyfriend is one of those average looking guys, but is otherwise pretty intelligent. His personality is a bit abrasive, and he doesn't take hints well. As you can tell they are the perfect matched pair. /s. So she's been on him for months to propose to her, but she wanted it done a specific way. She wants a photographer to be there, and she wants it done at a specific restaurant, and she wants him to get her a specific ring, etc. Anyway, Valentine's rolls around, and she specifically tells him not to propose to her on Valentine's because it's stupid, and him being oblivious does it anyway. He took her to this relatively upscale restaurant in our state's capital city. They had a nice dinner and there was a fountain surrounded by flowers where she wanted to sit and take pictures. So he proposed, and she shut him down. The night was ruined, and she came home. I happened to be over at her house at the time and she came in absolutely hysterical. Screaming and crying about how he ruined their date, how he screwed everything up, and how he couldn't just listen to her about what she wanted. I had a hard time consoling her, because I thought she was being ridiculous, but I was a shoulder to cry on. I'm talking to her boyfriend later, and he was absolutely blown away, and couldn't understand what the problem was. He said it seemed like the perfect time, and from the sounds of it, it seemed like a pretty romantic setting, albeit not what she asked for. That was nearly a year ago, and they are still together now. She's my friend and I love her to death. But sometimes I wonder how he puts up with her being so picky about everything. Oh, really a good one. During the first year of college, my classmate and I became friends as we had to travel by the same bus every day for 2 hours. He used to tell me his stories and show me funny videos on his phone every day and make me laugh all the time. Even after reaching home, we used to text all the time. Soon, I developed very strong feelings for him. I loved being with him, and it made me happy. Sometimes, our common friends used to tease him with me. Once a new person asked us if we were dating. I got very scared when she asked that, but secretly wished it was true. Till then no guy had proposed me, because I distanced myself from guys whenever I knew they liked me. After a few days, for the first time, I prayed God for him to propose me. I didn't have the guts to do so myself, because I thought that he didn't have the same feelings for me. The next day, Saturday, we were texting as always. At around 9 PM, he texted if I wanted to go out with him. That's it. My heart stopped beating. I felt my body temperature increasing, and I was numb. I just couldn't believe it. I asked myself if it was really true. I asked myself if asking to go out was really a proposal. I didn't know how proposals were. Now my heart was beating really fast. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to say no, because I didn't know what being in a relationship was like, as it was the first time someone was proposing me, or to say yes, because I wished for it, and I really loved him. I texted back, I don't know, but you are really nice. I still don't know why I texted that. My head was spinning. He texted that if I say no, we would still be friends and talk at lengths. It was my one and only wish to be with him. I said to myself, this is what you always wanted, and your dream is coming true. Don't lose him. Next moment I texted, okay, yes. For me it was really touching. Ick now. I'm not sure my wife knows about this. I didn't date a whole lot. I had a few non-sexual relationships in high school. I met a girl my sophomore year. She was cute, but at that age basically any girl that wasn't deformed was gorgeous to me. I got to be friends with this girl and came to really like her. She was fun, and hanging out with her made me happy. When I met her I was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a different girl I thought was my soulmate. Once we entered another off phase of our relationship, I thought, screw it. I like this other girl, why not date? She's someone to kill time with. Ick now? I didn't expect to fall in love, but I did. She was Pentecostal. I was a closet atheist, raised Catholic. Made seeing her outside of school kind of challenging. But I went to her church's youth functions, just to get more time with her. Anyway, end of the school year comes, and her parents are making her change schools, and I'm moving away, to go to a boarding school. We break up with no animosity, we are not idiots, we're young, and no trying to maintain a long distance relationship is dumb. We went on to date other people in high school. 1 or 2 summers after we broke up, I can't quite recall, she writes me a good old-fashioned letter, handwritten on paper. It was a very friendly letter, largely chit-chat. I, despite knowing it was a very rational move to break up, was missing her badly. I wrote back proposing we find each other after college, if we are still single, and are looking to settle down, or even just to give dating another go. She wrote back, as you can imagine, and shot me down. She didn't want to marry an atheist. She had a lot of problems with her religion, and when we started dating she had been falling away from it. She said that dating me actually helped her reconcile a lot of her issues with religion. She didn't want to be a Pentecostal anymore, but she knew she was, and would remain a Christian. Well, that stung. But I understood. Fast forward a year or more later, I'm back in my hometown, after I got kicked out of my boarding school, and I'm working at the local library. Lo, my ex comes in, and we strike up a long conversation, much to my manager's chagrin. Yeah. I still like this girl. I still found myself attracted to her, not to mention I was still reeling from being kicked out of school and was desperately lonely. I did something I hadn't ever done before. I asked a person out in person, face to face. Previously, I've used instant messenger or notes. I know, I'm a chicken cheat. She shot me down a second time. Said she was too busy with school and work and church. It was clearly a lie, but at least she was trying to let me down easy. Not much longer after that I started talking to a girl online who I would later marry. We've got a toddler and another one on the way. We are quite happy together. But if there ever was a one that got away, I'd say it was this ex. Curiously enough, I've tried cyber stalking her just to see how she's doing. Family of her own. Did she graduate from college? And does she have a good career? She was a very smart teenager. I hope she made use of that. I know her one friend got married at 19 and had 3 kids by 22 or something. Her other friend, the daughter of the pastor of her old church, is a stripper. I hope for her sake she's doing well. My boyfriend asked my parents in July if he could marry me, and they said yes. We started looking at rings. He'd initiate trips to the jewelry store, even went as far as having them double check my size mid-September. I figured we'd be engaged by Christmas, but every time we talked about it, the time frame was pushed back. I was fine waiting, but things started getting weird. He'd say things like, I know you're applying for grad school, but try not to do it based on where you think I'll be, and hinting that I might be too invested. I've done the breakup thing before. I knew he was just starting to check out of the relationship. I figured we'd either get engaged or break up. I wasn't sure which one. He ended up breaking up with me early October. It really sucked, but was very cliche. I was upset for the first few weeks, then started appreciating the independence and felt okay. He felt free the first few weeks, and then had a no-sheet moment. On Halloween we went out in the same group of mutual friends, and he drunkenly announced to the bar I should have brought a ring. I'm going to marry this girl. If she doesn't let me, I'll put a baby in her. I didn't let him do either one. But ever since then we've been going out together, and talking a lot more. We are not really in a relationship, but probably will be by Christmas. After reading all these, I'm realizing a common theme: life always looks so different than you expect it to. If someone told me where I'd be November 2016, I would have been so upset. But I'm actually really happy right now. Life is weird. Not me, but my parents. My parents were undergrads who ran in vaguely related social circles, but they didn't meet each other until some mutual friends started up a series of card games where they all piled into the little one-bedroom box shaped just off campus housing. My parents said their hey, how are yous, and didn't really have anything to do with each other for a week. A week later, a mutual friend of theirs, not the owner of the house, who had a huge crush on my mom, started getting drunk and competitive with my dad at another one of these poker nights. John started pointing out the women around the room, I assumed to try to get a gauge on my dad's taste in women. Apparently he thought that my dad thought that he was hot stuff, probably because dad was a Yankee and tends to be inscrutable on top of that, and said, "Ick now, I bet Mary'd rather marry me than you." Dad said, "Okay." John took this the wrong way entirely, got up and went across the room and loudly asked, "Mary, would you rather marry me or Joe?" She shut him down and said, "Joe." Most of their friends thought this was hilarious, but both of my parents share a do it, because they said you can't independent streak, and went out on their first date a couple of days later. And then they got married a month later, and my mother's Southern Belle socialite circles basically imploded 25 years and 10 kids later. Half of all of their relatives are still waiting for the divorce. John married another lady whom they were friends with after getting over his broken heart. And to this day there are people convinced that I was conceived out of wedlock, despite being born a year later. At least one of whom outright told baby me that it was perfectly reasonable to be born 3 months late. Edit. Just to clarify, my dad never did propose. Both of my parents count John's question as the proposal, and my mother shut down as a solid yes to my dad. We dated for nearly 7 years. She broke up with me once, but it was early in the relationship. At the time, I was 19, and she didn't like drinking. I never cheated, and never hit her. A few months later, she wanted me back, and despite my friend's guidance, we got back together, and stayed together for years. I waited until we both graduated from university, and had started our careers. I proposed at a fancy restaurant. She said I don't know, maybe, which meant no. I was discouraged, but we stayed together. Everything seemed fine, even at her birthday a few weeks later. Shortly after her birthday, she gives me several breakup cliches including "we are different people now, we've grown apart," and my personal favorite, "I thought you saw this coming. Why did I buy a ring and propose 6 weeks earlier if I thought we were breaking up?" To be fair, I should have known something was up. Hindsight. She was never very good with communicating her true feelings. My parting words were something like, "Please, don't ever do this to another guy. Have a wonderful life." I heard she married a couple years after we split, quit her job, moved to another part of the province, and had 2 kids. Friends recently told me that she got divorced, but who knows. I'm now married to the love of my life. My wife is open, honest, and caring. We couldn't be happier with the way things worked out. Edit. TLDR, she sucked at communicating her true feelings. Said maybe. Broke up with me using multiple cliches. This was 10 years ago. My high school sweetheart and I had talked about getting engaged many times while dating. After spending my first year away at college, I decided I would get my girlfriend a ring in order to make her feel more secure in the relationship. She wanted one anyway. She happily accepted. Many great times were had. I transferred to a school closer to her so we could spend more time together. The years start ticking by. We plan to have the wedding after I graduate. In the meantime, I get her into World of Warcraft so we can have a good shared hobby. She ended up meeting a guy in the guild we were in and becoming friends with him. One thing leads to another, and she ends up falling in love with this guy she hasn't even met. I strongly suspected the bond and confronted her about it, and she admitted to having feeling for this guy and for me. I'm really hurt by this, but I was fairly sure love would prevail. My fiance and I planned a trip for her to go meet this guy. We set up the flight and a place she can go to if he turns out to be a super creeper. My brother coincidentally lived a few streets over from this guy. Small world. We hid all of this from her parents and everyone else, since I figured she would go up there, see the guy wasn't that great, and come back to start life anew with me. I was naive. After the trip, I went to the airport to pick her up and drive her back home. I was excitedly waiting for her at the bottom of the escalator, waiting to hug her. I see her coming down, and then I noticed she was wearing a hoodie from his school. That was the trigger in my head that told me everything was not actually going to be okay, that she had made up her mind, and I was not the one she chose. We got to the car with the Valentine's candy I had bought for her sitting in the seat waiting for her, and just broke down crying. Even though we both knew it was over, we dragged the relationship out for a month after that. She was wearing that hoodie quite a bit, smelling it with a half smile. I somehow thought we might be able to work through it, but it really wasn't to be. She broke everything off almost a month to the day after getting back from the trip. I was devastated, which is kind of funny, really. I went into the relationship figuring I would try dating this girl that had the wildest crush on me for years. I wasn't super enthused at the start, but really grew to love her with all of my heart. She started off loving me fanatically and ended up realizing I wasn't what she wanted. I was so sure of our love that I really took it for granted. It was a really important lesson for me. On the plus side, she is married to the guy she left me for. They have a kid and a life that is probably better than what she would have had with me, so I can't really be bitter. So I've been with my boy for 3.5 years. We are each other's firsts. I'm not entirely sure how it was brought up the first time, but a year in, we were just about to start uni in different cities. The conversation went something along the lines of, if we can make it through long distance, we can make it, right? We had to talk a lot of things through between year 2 and 3. Things are just weird with long distance when you see each other again, and I had side effects from my contraceptives, all sorts. But I think I knew from the moment when, in our last few weeks before uni began, I told him I was glad that we had loved each other, even if it didn't last, and he replied that I just didn't get it. I was it for him. You bet yours I cried like fuck. So you know, I asked him to marry me one of the many times we were wrapped up in bed, and he said someday. I bartered for when we finished uni, even though his course is 2 years longer than mine, and he agreed. But I'm impatient, so I whittled it down. It kinda became a joke. Marry me, not until uni's over. Marry me, not until you finish uni. Marry me, not till we live together. Marry me, the sky isn't blue enough. Marry me, though. Nah, you smell. And then the engagement year began. Every faker we know gets the jewels. Now I'm not only impatient, I'm competitive. And the summer holidays are looming. I start conversationally planning finding rings, suggesting jewelry fairs we could check out sometime. Someone tells me Brighton is good for rings. Summer starts. I bring it up while we are out for a walk. He gets uncomfortable. I don't really remember the conversation after. Something along the lines of why do you want it so quickly? I honestly don't know what I said. It was like I'd been burned. I felt like he'd never taken me seriously at all. We talked about whether I wanted it more to show off to other people, which rang a little true. I defended it with how important he was to me. Course I wanted everyone to know. Asked him why he didn't want to. Half of it simmered down to what our parents would think. We agreed to talk to them about it. That went well, but it took me a few months to be able to even joke about it again. Happy to say my impatience is now directly aimed at finding a ring. Severely tempted at this point to use a piece of string fac. Shopping. OTL. This is not my story, and not really a rejection at the proposal, but a few years ago my older sister was living with her boyfriend and their daughter, who was only a baby. She'd complain to me all the time about how he treated her like crap. He never did any housework or anything to help take care of their baby. They couldn't afford childcare, so she stayed home to take care of their kids, and he constantly brought up how he was the one with a job, so he therefore was better than her. He worked at a GameStop. All he ever wanted to do when he wasn't working was smoke pot and play video games, so that's where a ton of their money went. Then one day she calls me all squealing in happiness. He took her out for Chinese food last night and proposed. I didn't want to ruin her happy mood, but I couldn't contain the dread building in my stomach. I told her I was happy for her, but then I said, you know, people don't really become different PPL after they get married. I'll support you if you get married, but just realize that he's not going to suddenly start treating you better just because you're his wife. She was saddened, but not mad, and after a few minutes she said she'd keep it in mind, and then we hung up. Several months later they were living with our dad. Because they couldn't make their rent, they got into a big fight in which he started calling her all sorts of horrible names. He called her a cunt, and she slapped him in the face, then locked herself in the bathroom to cry. He called the cops on her and got her arrested for domestic assault. It wasn't long after that she left him. They share custody of their daughter and now she's married to a great guy. That really makes her happy. We met about 6 months before I was done with grad school, and she stayed to complete her degree while I left for a job which had been arranged before we met. Our relationship grew quickly while together and worked well while apart for a while. The key issue became what she would be doing for the summer. She was going to be getting a research internship, but she was going to just take whatever came. There had been one offer, rather than actively seeking one in my area, which was really due to laziness more than anything else. As summer approached, that became more of an issue. During one of our nightly phone calls, I finally put it all on the line and said that I was committed to us and would leave my job and move back to the university town if she would agree to getting married. There was a pause and she asked how soon could I do that. I said that I could deal with everything and be back there in about 3 days. She said no. She said she needed some time to think and not to call her, that she'd call me. I next heard from her about 6 months later, which was basically a calling, just to say hi sort of call, and we talked for at least an hour or two just updating on what was going on in our lives. She had just started a relationship with someone else, but I knew about that since we had mutual friends. That was about 25 years ago, and I haven't heard from her since, though I know she finished her PhD and married 10 to 15 years back. I moved in with someone else about 22 years ago, and we married and have a child. I'm happy. While I don't wish her ill, and I'm happier in my marriage than I think I could ever have been with her, I do secretly wish that she regrets saying no to me and for such a crappy breakup. We had been headed in a bad direction for a long time. The two of us started dating in high school. I went to college first, and then she came too. She cheated on me not too long after the start of the school year. I took it hard, tried to move past it, but she kept getting more and more distant. We fought constantly. I'm not going to say that it was just her fault or just my fault. We both had our issues with each other, ranging from drinking issues to not wanting to spend time together, not being sexual or even affectionate with each other. At the time, I didn't see all that as one larger picture. I was holding on to the first 2 years together where we were inseparable and loved each other more than I thought possible. But at the end of 4.5 years, I proposed to her and she ran out of the apartment I was living in with my friends. I came to find out she was cheating on me again, and that the two of us really were so different from when we started that I hated who she became and she hated that I was more myself than ever. I didn't care about having popularity or people liking me, and she did. We ended things about 2 months after that. We talked over the next year. Sometimes I would try to work things out. Sometimes she'd have her friends talk to me about whether or not I missed her. It wasn't until a year after I had come to terms with what was. I hated the person she had become, and she hated me for the same reason. We missed the love. We missed the companionship, but we did not love each other and hadn't for a long time. I had some rough relationship roads ahead of me for the next several years. An aborted pregnancy, a relationship with someone who would never claim me, a few short-term girlfriends here and there. But it wasn't until I spent a couple years alone that I was perfectly okay with what had come to pass. I'm not going to lie. Thinking about the past, there are always what ifs, and you always wonder a little bit how the other is doing. But I don't when it comes to her. There are exes I have that I certainly have wondered, but not her. Occasionally some mutual friends will try to tell me what she is up to, and I stop them. I don't care. The person I fell in love with disappeared a long time ago. The person she was at the end is not someone I would keep in my life. It's hard not to wonder when things were just so good in the beginning. But it was actual hell in the end. I know I didn't help matters at all, and I probably made things worse in a lot of my own ways. I'm not vindictive. I don't want awful things to happen to her. I just don't care to know what has become of her, because I know what there was in the end. After working out all my issues, changing medications, therapy, and accepting life's very hard lessons, I found happiness with someone I dated before her. She was the one that got away. We could just be when we were together, and things took a turn to where we were talking to each other. Flash forward 2 years and the two of us have been married almost 9 months. I wouldn't change anything I have gone through to get to this point. I'm just that kind of person who needs the hard lessons to really drive home the lessons. She didn't say no, but things fell apart the night of the bachelor/bachelorette party. Our bachelor/bachelorette parties were the same night. Unplanned, the parties ended in the same place. That was a bar that also had bands. An 80s cover band was playing that night that we both liked. I walk in with my friends, grab a table towards the back of the bar, and as I'm sitting down, one of her friends came up to me and says, "You need to go to the men's room." Confused by this comment, but I went ahead and go. I walk in and hear a woman moaning. After about 5 seconds of this, I recognize who it is, and it is my fiancée. I climb up a urinal and look into the stall to see her drunk, bent over at the waist getting faked from behind by her ex-boyfriend. I reached down to her hand, removed the ring, and stepped down off the urinal. At this point, the bouncer was standing in the doorway watching. My ex freaked out, pulling her clothes up, and left the bathroom. Her ex got defensive with me, trying to blame me for the situation, etc. He throws a punch at me, misses. I grab the back of his head and bounce his face off the hand dryer in the bathroom. Broke his nose. The bouncer grabs him and throws him in the cab that's outside the back of the bar. I left, went back to my apartment, and packed all her stuff in a box I could find, and when FedEx opened, I shipped her stuff to her apartment. We didn't talk again until 2013 through Facebook. Oh wow, I can contribute. I had been dating a girl from high school on and off for 2 years. We were together for a total of about 1.4 or something. I was a senior to begin with, she was a freshman. I met her at the musical I had a lead in. I had no idea she was a freshman and she asked me out actually. I had never dated or even kissed someone at this point in my life, so I was like, ah fuck yeah, let's do this. Long story short, her family was insane and tried faking me over on new cars and other legal things due to age difference. We broke up the night we lost our virginity to each other. I thought it would heal things, and she thought it would keep me. Fast forward a year later, and we are on and off, just having crazy awesome sex whenever we can. Eventually we got serious again, and I would throw around the M word to see how serious she was this time around. After cyclic arguing for months, and about a month after I had proposed to her in Multnomah Falls, I told her I wanted to return the rings, because I was obviously being used for what money I had, and we just weren't similar to each other. I wanted to work more on us before the rings came into play again. About a week after that she became very distant, and I found out she had been cheating on me, and she called it off. I didn't get a lot of answers, and had multiple failed suicide attempts afterwards. I realized I was extremely codependent with people, and had become a sex addict. I'm still single and hardly ever mingle, but I'm so happy that I went through all those things. I think the person I'm turning out to be now is much better than the person I was going to turn out to be if that relationship had gone further. I had problems that were not going to be dealt with if we had continued. TLDR, don't settle, don't date people with family that hates you, and don't date people in different stages of emotional maturity than you. Not a proposal per se, but we had been together a couple of years during which she had brought up the subject multiple times. I'm not really into marriage, I just don't understand the purpose, and it seems like a colossal waste of resources, and I had let her know that while I'm not into it, it doesn't mean that if it was something she needed to make her feel happy, or whatever, I would consider it when we were ready. Well, eventually I felt that, yes, I want to spend my life with this person, so I should let her know, not propose, but let her know that yes, I want to be with her for my life. At which point she said, "Doesn't matter when you ask, I'll say no." So I asked why she had brought it up so many times and made such a fuss about it. I wanted to see if there was potential to get married, not that I'd say yes. She then informed me she was moving to China in a couple of weeks. Since I was overwhelmingly in love with her, and this was a bit of a shock, I asked if 1, she considered me at all in this, and 2, if she would be okay if I wanted to move with her. The answer was no to both. This was a few months ago, and just thinking about it makes me want to get hit by a bus, or just not wake up when I go to sleep next. End result, she is living a new life, and probably happy. I'm severely depressed, can't sleep at night, and have gained about 30 to 40 pounds. I find I don't enjoy much, and have very little drive to do anything. I suppose I've also developed a drinking problem. I was 21, and she was 19. We were celebrating our 4-year anniversary. Like young people do, we always talked about being together forever and getting married. It was just what we were going to do, because we were that couple that gets together in high school and last forever. I realized later that I liked that idea more than I actually liked her. Anyway, I took her to a beach at sunset. Had a friend hiding to take pictures. There was no doubt in my mind that she was going to say yes. I put my hand in my pocket, start to drop to one knee, and she grabs my shirt and goes no. I was super confused. Like I said, I had no doubt she was going to say yes. So I kept going. "Will you marry me?" She teared up and hesitated. Yes. But I could tell she didn't mean it. So I stood up and hugged her and let her cry for a bit. I told her that it was okay, that she just wasn't ready. Then a really nice guy with a camera walked up to us, huge grin on his face, and said, "I got the whole thing. Want me to send you the pictures?" It was so nice of this total stranger that saw this whole sunset beach proposal, and from where he had been he thought she said yes. Her face still buried in my shoulder. I had to tell this nice man no, thank you. He was so confused and walked away looking pretty hurt. I still feel bad about that. It was so kind of him. She said for a long time after that she didn't know why she didn't want to say yes. We stayed together another 2 years until I realized that I hadn't liked her as a person for a long time. Our 6-year relationship really should have ended after 1. It's relatively often that I wonder what would have happened if she had wanted to get married when I proposed. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life, but 7 years, 1 wife, and 1 beautiful daughter later, I'm so thankful that the first girl I proposed to said no. I dated my ex for 5 years, and at the end of it, we had a mutually agreed breakup, as we both wanted very different things in life, and having been long distance for much of the time had definitely not helped. While I loved him dearly when we dated, I never reached the point of wanting to ask him to marry me, although I thought about it a few times for sure. When I met my current partner, I knew the first day I met him that there was something different. I knew after a week that he was the one for me. After a month, I moved overseas for a year, and he was as keen as I was to continue dating. Even though I'd sworn after the last relationship to never do long distance again. He came to visit me 3 months later, and I took him to the tallest building in the city with the most beautiful nighttime view of the city lights, handed him a book I'd made for him with a carefully crafted love letter, written half poetically, and with the message "Will you marry me?" coded into it. He said no, as he felt it was too early. I had prepared myself for that answer and handled it gracefully then, but by 2 hours later back our hotel room, I was so terrified that I had ruined things between us, and he had to console me for half an hour. We are now 2 months away from 2 years of dating and planning our life together for the future. I haven't made any repeated attempts. I think I might leave the next one to him. I don't doubt we will spend our lives together, but I really wouldn't mind making it official too, but I'm too scared to ask again. When I was 21, a girl I was dating on and off for about a year proposed to me. She got down on her knee and everything. Didn't even have a ring. It was cringe-inducing. Our relationship was already on the rocks. We had previously broken up for a little over a month because she cheated on me with this guy, all the while insisting there was nothing going on. I even let him borrow some of my clothes once. Actually, what I let him borrow was uniform items. I was in the military at the time, and he lived in a different barracks on the same base as me. Obviously I didn't know at the time that he faked my girlfriend. So yeah, she proposed in the midst of troubling times. I very momentarily hesitated before turning her down. She was upset, of course. There's really no other way to take that. Around this same time, I spent a lot of my time worrying she was going to kill herself because she talked about it a lot. Eventually I got so tired of her verbal abuse, she was verbally abusive, BT dubs, that I basically told her we're done. Can't do it anymore. If you need to kill yourself as a result, then go for it, but I can't stay trapped in this relationship. Fun fact, when I met her, she was already married to a Marine. He was deployed in Afghanistan. She said he was physically abusive, so I didn't feel guilty. He knowingly helped pay for the apartment we moved into and then transferred to another base. Later found out she had borderline personality disorder. Now I feel like I did that poor son of a bitch a solid favor. 3 times I've said no to different people. Each was under pretty crappy circumstances. Dude 1, I got into the relationship pretty young. For me, he was older. 5 years together. Realized his ways of constant gaslighting and emotional abuse were eating away at my confidence and self-esteem, and confided in a friend I wasn't happy, who admitted she knew he cheated on me. So I started making my move, telling him how I wanted some change, ECT trying to gently start to ease out. He rapped me. So I bailed. He yelled at me. I thought we could get married. WFT. No. Due to asked me to marry his friend for immigration purposes, to which I said no, as I'd never even met the guy. Dude 3, I'd just been dumped by the guy of my dreams after 3 years together. We'd been planning to move away together, but the stress of everything was too hard. I planned a trip through Europe instead, to meet up with some buddies, see family, see the world, and forget about my troubles. In the planning and saving stage, a guy I knew through friends asked me on a date. I thought, why not? It was just a bit of fun, I thought. Let's go see a show, grab some dinner, etc. Went on a few dates like that. He knew from the get-go I was planning a couple of months in Europe. I jokingly said, quit your job and follow me. He paused too long. Red flag 1. Soon asked me to join him for a brunch that weekend. His extended family was there. He didn't tell me I'd be meeting his family. Red flag 2. His friends took me aside and gave me a telling off for leaving for Europe, and that what I was doing was totally unfair on their friend. Red flag 3. I explained it has been planned since before he was on the scene, so back off guys. I'm coming back anyway. They looked shocked. He definitely told them some different story. Anyway, holiday rolls round, and he cried at the airport. What the fuck, I'm coming back, all my stuff's here, and I'm still paying rent for my place while I'm gone. He said he had seriously thought about quitting and following me. I told him to calm down, it's just a holiday. Anyway, a few weeks in, I'm in Italy, and found some free Wi-Fi. I had hundreds of messages from him telling me I was a beach, then apologizing, then a beach, then he was sorry, he's just lonely, then a beach, that we aren't getting married now, we never were, what the fuck. So yeah, I called him from the toilets to say it was over. He said we can get married when you get back. I repeated it's over. He tried calling me several times. I stopped answering. Got back with the guy who dumped me at the start of this story, and we talked about the stress of moving and apologized to one another for the stressful time taking its toll, and I never told him about the total nut bar I dated in between. Too embarrassed really, and we are still together 2 years down the track and vow to never marry, and we love each other how we are. I somewhat proposed one time. I was young and stupid. We were at this event our town holds every weekend in the summer. A band plays in the square, drinks everywhere, people selling stuff. The everyone here is going to hell, but you can be saved if you buy stuff from me guy, the whole shebang. I had just graduated high school, and she was a rising senior. We had broken up less than a month before, her idea, but were still very close. I looked at her after the band finished a song and started walking towards the stage. She asked what I was doing, and I pulled off my class ring, showed it to her, and I replied with, I'm going on stage, so I can steal the mic and propose to you. She looked completely shocked, then almost immediately retorted, no 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 no. 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 don't. I laughed and asked why I was messing with her, because she hated being put on the spot in front of an audience. She said because I'll say no. I laughed it off, and she brought me to the back of the crowd. We listened to another song and afterwards she asked if I was serious about marrying her. I told her I was dead serious and would get down on one knee right now and ask if she preferred that. She thought for a minute and I started to get down on my knee. She pulled me up, kissed me, and said I just broke up with you less than a month ago. Why now? I replied with this is my last ditch effort to prove how serious I am, to prove how much I love you, and to prove that I would do anything for us. She said we were too young, and I told her I didn't care and neither did she. She said okay, that's true, but I can't. I told her it was okay, I was okay, and that I hope that decision makes her happy in the long run. We stayed close for a couple of months, then she got a new boyfriend and refused to talk to me. We haven't spoken in over a year and I haven't gone more than 10 hours without thinking about her since I first met her. But she is happier this way, so I'm happy for her. TLDR, at concert type thing, as I was walking towards stage she pulled me back, and I told her I was proposing. She said no. Now we don't talk. I worked a second job at a liquor store in a shitty part of town, and saved up enough for 2 tickets to Florida, tickets to Disney World, a hotel and rental car. I planned on proposing to my girlfriend in front of the castle during the fireworks. Things didn't exactly go according to plan. I had been playing hide the engagement ring since we left from the airport and I don't know why, but for some reason I felt like I needed to have the velvet box to open when I got down on one knee. In retrospect it would have been much easier to simply carry the ring without the box. It was pretty obvious I had a small box in my pocket, so I decided I would try to hide it in the car while we drove to Disney World. It was a rental, and the only 2 spots I could think to hide it were A. the glove box, B. the pocket behind the seat. In retrospect again, B would have been a much better choice. Anyways, the first thing she does when she gets in the car was open the glove box. I knew right away from the look on her face that she'd seen it. So I proposed to her right in the rental car. She said yes, but she wanted me to redo the proposal the way I had planned on doing it. So we went to Disney World, had a blast, and it started getting dark. I check my bag and I left the ring in the car. So I race back to the parking lot, forgot where I parked. Holy shit, that's a massive parking lot. Somehow found the car, pleaded with the people at the gate to let me back in, and got back to my girlfriend. I was drenched in sweat, out of breath, and managed to pop the question a second time shortly after the first firework had gone off. That was 10 years ago from October 29th. My overall plan was to go to Germany and propose a second, third time in front of Castle Neuschwanstein 10 years later, since I went there once when I was a kid and knew that the Disney castle was modeled after it, but those plans got tossed into the wind due to medical bills and shit. Oh well, maybe I'll try again, or our 15-year. I was 14 and had a mad crush at the most beautiful girl of my class. She was stunning. I could stare at her for hours and hours and wouldn't even mind when we had long days at school. To me this meant that I could spend more hours staring at her blonde hairs, her blue eyes and her cheeky little birthmark under her chin. She wasn't one of the popular girls, but she was the topic of conversation of the boys during lunch break. I wouldn't dare taking part in these conversations for I was too afraid someone would find out about my secretly love. Yet, for everyone it was more than obvious what was going on. Anyway, after months and months of staring and getting frustrated of her giving attention to what felt like every other guy at school but me, I finally decided it was time for action. I had to know if I stood a chance. It's a beautiful sunny spring day, days are long and nights short. It was as well my birthday. This gave me so much confidence because everybody in class congratulated me, and as usual I would receive 3 kisses on the cheek, as is tradition in my country. And when after everyone congratulated me, she was left as last. The whole class is looking. You could feel all the excitement. Everyone was expecting something to happen. She walked up to me, said, "Happy birthday Eric, hope you have a great day," gives me a kiss on my left cheek, one on the right and another one on the left cheek again. I was in heaven. The smell of her hair, her scent was great. Our faces never were so close to each other. This must have been the best day of my life, I thought. Her words were like a magic spell and my mind went through the roof. Today I knew something was going to happen. Fast forward a few hours, school's out, everybody goes home and makes themselves ready for the Thursday night shopping night at our local town. All the teenagers gather up and stroll around looking for excitement, yet there is none, but to smoke some cigarettes hidden from your parents and drinking some energy drinks. I knew she would be there, so I thought, I'm going to surprise this girl. I went to the flower shop and bought the most beautiful rose I could find. For the time it cost me a fortune, for my parents wouldn't give me money and I struggled finding a small job. I go the shopping night, everybody is there. Surely everybody sees me walking around with a rose in my hands, and surely 10 minutes later everybody knows what's up. It was too late. I was already spotted with my rose and couldn't back out of it anymore. I could not and would not go into the history books as the guy who chickened out. I walk up to her, her eyes start shining. She tries to hide her face behind her hands and she smiles. Oh god, I love that smile. Every step I got closer to her it felt like I was jumping from galaxy to galaxy, slowly but surely getting closer and closer to the sun. I was sweating, but luckily my jacket would hide that. Everything was going perfectly, and when I stood before her I thought I didn't have the courage to say anything. I got myself together and managed to give her the rose, and finally my mouth starts working again. I said, "Will you be my girlfriend?" Time stood still. This must have worked. Inside I was screaming. Such a genius I was, and so proud of myself. Her lips started moving. Her jaw was opening, and she was about to say something. My excitement couldn't barely be contained anymore. In my mind I was saying, "Speak, woman." And finally she said, "Sorry Arag, you're cute, but I'm already with Chad now."